Welcome to this special meeting of the Highland Council. This meeting will be filmed and broadcast over the internet and the Highland Council website and will be archived and available for viewing for 12 months thereafter. Members in the chamber are reminded to keep both their laptops and mobile phones on silent, and those online to keep their microphones muted unless speaking in debate. I'll now hand you over to Stuart Fraser, who will call the roll.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, members. So, members, starting with those of you in the chamber, could I ask you to confirm your attendance by pressing the green button when you have the option in front of you. Thank you.
Push the green one. There. No. How do I do? There, green. Yeah. You put it there.
Margaret, that's good.
Members, I've still got 7 members not showing as having voted, so if you still have the option, could you confirm your attendance, please? Okay, if everybody's managed to vote, we'll close the vote in the chamber. Thank you. And the number of members participating on Teams. So if I come round you and confirm your attendance, I'll call your name. Councillor Coggle.
Present online, thank you, Stuart.
Councillor Collier.
Good morning, present online, thank you.
Councillor Hendry.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Jarvie.
Morning all, present.
Councillor Mackay.
Present.
Councillor Kate McLean.
I'm here, thanks, Stuart.
Councillor Miller.
Present.
Councillor Morrison.
Morning, Stuart, present.
Councillor Niven.
Morning, Stuart, present.
Councillor Prosser.
Present.
Councillor Rosie.
Good morning, President.
And Convener, we had a number of apologies this morning, so we have apologies noted from Councillors Crawford, Gunn, Kennedy, McEwen, McGilvray, Sagers and Sinclair.
Members, are there any declarations of interest not already noted?
Thank you. I have a number of transparency statements to share with the meeting, and again, thanks to those members for sharing those with us before the meeting. So the following members have applied the objective test, reviewed their position in relation to these items and any personal connection, and do not consider that they have an interest to declare. These are all in respect of item 4. Councillor Christie as a non-executive director of Inverness Business Improvement District and as chief executive of Inverness Badenoch and Strathspey Citizens Advice Bureau. Councillor Edmondson as a close family member is a part-time employee of High Life Highland. Councillors Gale and Craft as owners of second homes. Councillor Andrew Jarvie as an employee of the Mental Welfare Commission and as a director of Scottish Autism. Councillor Miller as a family member is employed by Highland Council, Councillor Stewart, a family member employed by Highland Council, and Councillor Gregg as an employee of NHS Highland and board member of Inverness, Badenoch and Strathspey Citizens Advice Bureau.
Members, just a quick reminder, the chat facility must only be used for motions and amendments. That's the in meeting chat facility. There are other ways you can contact other members. Thank you. Members, we recently heard of the sad passing of a former colleague, Charlie King, and I'm sure you'll join me in passing on our condolences to his family and friends. Councillor McLennan.
Thank you, Convener. Charlie was a Highland Councillor for Malig in the Small Isles between 1995 and 2007, and it was my privilege to get to sit beside him at Le Havre planning committees and area committees from 2003 to 2007. Charlie was normally elected unopposed because he was just such an excellent councillor. Whenever you think of Charlie, you think immediately of the Malig Road. You go down to Lochhyler, you're confronted with 14 miles of the best road in the Highlands. It's got the longest straights, just an amazing piece of infrastructure. Charlie was one of the main movers to get that in. He represented Egg, Muck, Rum, Canna, Noida, which to all intents and purposes is an island itself. And by the time Charlie's tour of duty was finished, they had new piers and slipways and harbours. The children on these islands used to have to go, when they got to secondary school, they had to go into digs in Malig. By the time Charlie was finished, funding was in place for a purpose-built hostel to be built in Malig for them so he made a huge difference to these communities. And especially on Egg and Noida, where they had community buyouts, you know, making a huge difference. He was the chair of the Malig Harbour Trust. You see the difference in Malig, the hustle and bustle down there, the marina that's been built. He made an amazing difference. And he was never the loudest voice in a room or in this chamber, but when he spoke, you listened, because invariably he made nothing but sense. He was the first chair of High Trans, and he was a chair of, this is where I remember him the most, sitting where you are, Convener, as the chair of Tech Services, which would be the equivalent of community and place in today's parlance. He was there twice, 2 councils running, and in them days, you didn't get to be the chair by being political backing behind you. It was the people in this chamber trusted you and respected your judgment, and he served 8 years, at least 8 years as the chair of Techs. And I remember one part where some money had been discovered and to spend it on a road. And there was much debate in here for about 40 minutes at Tech Services. And after about 40 minutes, Charlie made an interjection as chair, and he says, look, if you don't hurry up and make your mind up what you are doing with this money, I will find somewhere to spend it on the Malig Road. Within 5 minutes, a decision was arrived at, and I was struck by the amount of councillors afterwards who said, Charlie on the Malig Road, he wouldn't have been kidding. So if you're looking for a benchmark to judge whether you're making a difference for your community, Charlie King is an excellent benchmark.
Thank you, Thomas. Margaret?
Yes, I think I have to stand up and say Charlie was a darling, and that is the truth. I agree with everything that Thomas has said, and I have to thank knowing Charlie and having his advice that I managed to get my road into Dingwall. I don't think I would even have it now if it wasn't for Charlie, and I think I got the money, if I can remember. He gave me advice and everything, so I loved serving with him for his 2 terms. Thank you.
Members, we now move on to the main part of the day, which is item 3 on your agenda, and I'll leave you in the tender care of Brian Porter. sorry, before we start, I've missed one. It's a good start to the day. It's about it's just really for noting its membership of and welcoming Councillor Matthew Prosser to the council. Item 4, Brian, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Convener, and good morning, members. Agreeing the budget and council tax is one of the most important decisions the council makes in any year. The report in front of you today sets out the legal context and requirements, in particular, as per 1992 Local Government Finance Act, the requirement to set a balanced budget. The report also provides further information on the role of members and officers in this regard. The report provided today, the information contained within, and the proposals for consideration will allow members to fulfil their legal obligations. There have been reports to Council over the past 6 months on the Council's financial planning. All groups and members have had the opportunity for briefing from myself in advance of today, and I'd like to thank all members and officers involved in the budget process for your support and input. I'll now highlight what I consider to be some of the particular points of relevance within the report, ultimately to support members in your discussion and decision making today. Paragraph 6.1 of the report should be familiar to members. It sets out what has been the core financial planning assumption over the past 6 months. After taking account of decisions made in March 2025, planning assumptions in relation to council tax, grant settlement and other matters, a budget gap of 46.7 million was forecast over the 3 financial years. The Council's financial planning and the proposals to be considered today are therefore focused on ensuring that for 26-27 a balanced budget is achieved and no budget gap remains in that year, and the proposals within the report would support that if agreed. For years 2 and 3, the proposals would largely close the forecast gap in those years and represent a further positive step in regards to the Council's financial sustainability. Members will note from section 7 of the report and the graph on page 13 in particular that despite a modest cash increase in grant settlement for 26-27, the prospects for future years remain challenging. A flat cash settlement for local government is assumed within the report for those future years and supported by the analysis provided. Quite clearly, given the effects of inflation and the need to provide for such costs, a flat cash settlement means in reality a real terms reduction in funding, as shown in the graphic. The Council's multi-year budgeting approach and forward decision-making on savings and other measures will continue to assist with the Council's planning and being prepared for financial challenges in future years. While a balanced budget is the legal requirement, what is also important is that the detail within the budget is well-based. The proposed budget recognises cost increases, pressures and other demands, and as far as practical and affordable establishes a budget for the forthcoming years which will allow the Council to continue to sustain and deliver services and to avoid or mitigate risk of budget pressures and overspending. The proposed budget would support the Council in addressing such risks, in particular through the significant funding proposed to provide for budget pressures, to rebase budgets, to reprofile savings, and to provide funding to support recovery plans. There's significant information within the report in relation to adult social care. You will note significant funding additions and adjustments to be considered by members. Given the scale of financial pressures in adult social care and as set out within the report, it remains a significant area of risk for the Council. And as I've highlighted within the report, there remains an absolute need for significant cost reduction, change and transformation delivered at greater pace than has been the case to date. The report provides information on proposed funding to be set aside by the Council to support adult social care cost recovery and transformation. The budget proposals within the report will be further supported by existing financial management controls and arrangements which have been positively commented on by Audit Scotland, and there are further enhancements to those controls described within the report, including the introduction of a new financial strategy template for services. Delivering against budget and avoiding overspend is vital to protect the Council's reserves and to reduce pressures and challenges in future years. The proposals and actions described within the report would form part of a wider financial management strategy to address those risks. There's been comprehensive briefing of council managers on the proposed budget and the expectations and accountabilities they have. The level of reserves held and the use of reserves are key considerations for members. And the report provides my commentary as your section 95, stating that I consider the level of reserves held to be sufficient. As noted in the report, there are proposals to transfer reserves from earmarked to the general reserve to support the Council retaining its 3% target level. The budget proposals set out to make no assumed use of reserves to balance the budget for the year, which is an important consideration in terms of ongoing financial sustainability.
We pause the meeting. Please turn off the webcast.
Okay, thank you, Convener. My final point just before finishing. So council tax represents one of the key decisions to be made by members today, and the report outlines proposals and financial implications relating to core council tax charges, as well as charges for second homes and long-term empty properties. While these are ultimately matters for members to debate and decide, I would highlight that the extent to which this council commits to increases in council tax income to produce a recurring and sustainable income stream on which the budget is founded clearly reduces the need for savings or other measures as an alternative. So thank you. That concludes my introduction.
Councillor Bremner.
Good morning, members. Thank you, Convener, and thank you to Brian Porter. Members, before I present the budget on behalf of the Joint Administration, I'd like to move the recommendations in the report, and I believe that, Convener, you are happy to second. As I've mentioned in previous years, I'm grateful to everyone who has contributed to the papers presented to Council today and to those who have engaged with us in the budget process over the past few months, including members and senior officers, their teams, and also those in our communities who have been engaging during the budget setting period. It's a multifaceted budget, and it builds on the work and aims that the current administration has continued to deliver over past years, which include but aren't limited to providing continued financial stability, providing for a continued sustainable future, continuing investment in our communities, and continuing our focus on boosting economic growth in the Highlands. All of this is still within the context of a very financially challenging environment for the public sector and a grant funding settlement that falls short of the service demands that we face and the priorities that we have as a Highland area. As leader of the Council for nearly 4 years now, and as I mentioned last year, you continue to recognise that the challenge in today's financial, economic and commercial climate, they don't get any easier in being able to try and balance a budget. It also means that the decisions we have to make don't get any easier. In fact, they become very much more difficult. Local authorities across the UK continue to face some of the most financially challenging times, and here in Scotland, those challenging times most definitely continue. Members will know that last year and this year, we have been setting our budget in respect of a 3-year financial outlook for local government, based on Scottish Government figures and analysis produced by COSLA. You'll find that this is referred to in the budget paper. The outlook includes a net cash uplift for 2026 to 2027 of just over £8 million. This is set against the backdrop of flat cash in the following 2 years. And flat cash doesn't take account of inflation. Through COSLA, we are actually provided a valuable platform of continued corporate representation to governments, complementing our own direct representation and representation afforded to us through other forums. We understand the challenges that face governments. However, local governments in particular continue to see a greater real terms reduction in funding when considered against other public organisations. Despite all of this, our approach has not been one of simple salami slicing of budgets. This administration is presenting another multi-year sustainable budget aligned to our strategic priorities that will deliver for Highland communities, not just this year, but for several years ahead. Our multi-year approach allows us to be more strategic and forward-looking and thinking in shaping the Council's future operating model, which will continue our focus on decentralisation of services, investment in our buildings and our infrastructure, targeted support for those who need it most, and a number of measures that help communities remain independent and remain resilient. This also means we can move, and we will continue to move, away from the year-to-year savings approach that was a feature of previous administrations. Within this budget paper, members will see proposals for a £61 million package of service and strategic savings, income generation proposals and financial flexibilities over the next 3 years to close the budget gap and allow for new investments. It also includes 41.7 million of new proposals, which have been carefully worked through by officers across the services, and around £20 million of proposals agreed over the last 2 years as part of our 3-year budget setting process. Some of these previously agreed proposals have been revised to reflect further due diligence or changes and influences in a changing external environment. As part of the £61 million package, a total of £28 million of savings is proposed for 2026-2027, of which £15.3 million are new. Whilst this is a major challenge for the Highland Council, we've successfully met these challenges in recent years. We now have a strong record of prudent financial management and long-term planning. And as I've referred to in this chamber previously, this has been recognised by Audit Scotland. And our strategic, progressive approach to achieving savings and generating income beyond our grant funding and council tax is becoming very much established and very much recognised. As I've said in previous budget addresses, this administration has always looked to keep any rise in council tax for the people of the Highlands to a minimum. That minimum has to be at a level where we get the balance right, where we do not sacrifice jobs, where we don't sacrifice services, and where we don't screw more blood out of the stone, so to speak, where we pay a little more in real terms to save what we are not being provided fully for by governments. That is why the Council's administration proposes an increase in council tax of 7%. We've already set out our plans in respect of this, not just in previous months, but also in my budget address of last year. 5% will be on the base to deliver a balanced budget, as stated in previous medium-term financial updates to the Council, to support delivery of vital council services like education, like housing, day-to-day roads operations and social care, and 2% will be ring-fenced to continue to deliver and support the Highland Investment Plan as stated and agreed by Council coming up to 2 years ago now. And that's our £2.1 billion 20-year capital investment programme to deliver improvements to schools, infrastructure, community services and facilities, and sustained increases in roads capital investment. In adhering to these two commitments, and with no other additional rise on top of that, we believe that we will continue to be one of the lower increases in council tax out of the 32 local authorities in the country. We continue to take cognizance of expectations by auditing bodies and codes of practice that council tax should be used as the final balancing figure. As stated last year that we didn't use a rise in council tax in the now current financial year as a reducing factor for the budget gap, and that we would remain committed to this approach in future years. That commitment has followed through to this year and this year's budget, and, as far as I'm concerned, will follow through to next year's budget and any future years that we may have the ability to direct that. Since last year, we now have financial flexibilities around council tax, allowing us to increase the amount we charge on second homes and long-term empty homes. This is currently charged at 200%, and we are proposing to increase this to 250% on long-term empties and 300% on second homes in 2026-2027 to support the Highland Housing Challenge. Since this administration has a responsibility for the financial direction of Highland Council, we continue to apply the principles of the reserve strategy that we introduced to Council in December 2023, and there is no plan to use non-earmarked reserves to balance this year's budget. This budget continues to demonstrate our commitment to ensure that the Highland Council has secure, robust, financial and effective management. We don't only want to deliver a balanced budget, we want to continue our commitment to making the Council financially sustainable for the future. This budget continues to build on the considerable and comprehensive budget consultation that we undertook 2.5 years ago. This year, we have met with community councils, and some of you were with me when I did that, Councillor Oldham, and business representatives as well. And we've assessed other feedback that we've received. We've found that many comments and responses continue to reflect the main priorities that our communities want to see us pay attention to. We heard from community councils, some of whom said that they're paying for the administration of their community council out of their own pockets. We have heard from communities that want to help to provide investment in small, meaningful projects in their own local area. That's why you'll see that we've decided to support community councils and local communities with what we consider is that meaningful investment, increasing funding for community councils and the ward discretionary budget, both outlined in the budget papers. I'd also like to reiterate our response to those who met with us from businesses and community councils and who told us they would welcome continued meaningful engagement throughout the year, not just for the budget process, and I've asked officers to draw up plans to put this in place throughout this financial year and to look to sustain that engagement going forward. I'd also like to state that it is the intention of this administration to bring forward the whole budget engagement process, to embed a review and engagement process in respect of budget setting late summer to early autumn. This demonstrates, as far as I'm concerned, our continued willingness to invest in our communities, increasing our engagement and delivering on this commitment both financially, locally and on a more personal basis. During our engagement, we set out the budget position clearly and our work in terms of investment and in terms of trying to minimise the impact on our consideration of and application of the necessity to reduce, to redesign, to reappropriate or otherwise increase the efficiency of our service delivery and the operation of the organisation in order that we can contribute effectively to reducing, minimising and eliminating unnecessary cost. The details of our final considerations in terms of that work are also detailed in the annexes of the budget papers that you've got. I'm going to repeat the same commitment that this administration has always given in our approach to budget setting in respect of employment. We've always indicated that despite the continued financial challenges to the Highland Council, we will protect as many jobs as we possibly can, and I make the same commitment once again this year. We reiterate this administration's long-standing commitment and track record of avoiding redundancies wherever possible, where we have targeted savings that affect positions Our aim has been to manage vacancies and redesign positions and restructure rather than moving the actual employment role. Indeed, in this budget, our investment plans, if agreed, will seek to create new jobs throughout the Highlands in order to deliver improved service and improved support to our Highland communities, including a focus on, but not restricted to, climate impact assessment, future operating model, biodiversity, My Highland Future, and lots of other areas as the scope of a number of investment projects develop. It is worth reflecting on the work of the administration to date, which this budget continues to support. We continue our work with 3 very important and very innovative programmes, which you know about already: the Highland Investment Plan, the Social Value Charter, and the Highland Housing Challenge. But to that, and not restricted to that, we now see our stated commitment to financially support the work of the Poverty and Equalities Commission as they continue to scope out the targeted work of the Commission. You'll remember I mentioned about us committing to the Poverty and Equalities Commission in last year's budget. It's now underway. That investment is detailed in the budget papers. However, in addition to these programmes, and notwithstanding other references that I've already made, we'll be introducing a number of new programmes. Our overall approach to multi-year planning, our strategic and service savings, income generation proposals and the council tax changes proposed have allowed us to invest. The administration's investment plans will bring forward plans for £12 million of new investment. £3.5 million of that will be recurring, and £8.5 million of it will be non-recurring, and that's to strengthen key services and support. This includes new investment for roads, housing, support for children and families experiencing poverty or barriers to learning, public toilets, workforce development, reuse and repair, community projects, adult social care and other community investments. These investments support our delivery programme, emerging council priorities, just so that you heard that right, emerging, not merging, emerging council priorities and our future operating model. This £12 million of new investment will add to £4.5 million of recurring revenue investment in education, additional support needs, countryside access rangers, amenities and grass cutting, but also where local ecological approaches can be considered, and improvements to care and respite, agreed as part of our budget setting process last year. These investments align with our delivery programme and have been implemented through the Council's strategic committees in 2025-2026 and in close consultation with our trade union colleagues, and remain ongoing commitments. I particularly want to highlight some of these new and recurring investments for 2026-2027. We'll start with the £1 million fund to support the Highland Housing Challenge, funded through income generated by council tax, levied on second home and long-term empty properties. We committed 24,000 new homes are required over the next 10 years to meet housing demand. There are just under 9,000 people on the Highland Housing Register seeking a new home. The properties, the council has notably more second homes and long-term empty properties than any other local authority in Scotland. For long-term empty properties, 41% have been empty for more than 3 years. This fund would create a grant and a loan scheme to encourage owners of long-term empty properties to bring them back into occupation as principal homes, improve the availability of housing within local communities, and to reduce the negative impacts associated with empty or underused properties, and we can all think of some that are in our own areas. £500,000 additional investment in revenue for roads maintenance, which will complement the previously agreed £21.5 million of capital investment in roads in 2026-2027. To put this in context, When I was elected in 2017-2018, the budget that year provided only £11.9 million of revenue and £8.2 million of capital investment, a total of £20 million. Together, the budget for 2026-2027 will provide a total investment in all things related to winter maintenance and lighting and roads repair and maintenance, both revenue and capital, to just shy of £40 million. £500,000 to enable immediate action on the recommendations of our Poverty and Equalities Commission when they published their findings this June. This represents targeted support to address poverty-related issues in Highland. £406,000 of additional investment for schools to support children experiencing poverty and barriers to learning through a 2% to up to 2% to pupil equity funding. We've also listened to our community councils, and as I've said earlier, there'll be additional investment in our ward discretionary budgets. It's £105,000. Public toilets, £72,000. And community councils, £55,000. In addition, we've identified funding to support several priorities this year specifically that are non-recurring. Our proposal to provide £7 million of additional investment to support the Social Care Transition Fund. This will enable the change and transformation work required in adult social care to develop a sustainable model and will also help ensure people can actually live independently in their own homes for as long as possible. This is on top of £5 million to balance the NHS Highland social care budget in 2025-2026 and an additional net investment of new and recurring revenue of £7.040 million in 2026-2027. This adds up to additional investment in adult social care of £19 million. Our core revenue budget funding for adult social care will now be £156.2 million in 2026-2027. We're also proposing a £1.6 million investment to create a Workforce North co-investment fund in partnership with Skills Development Scotland. This includes a one-off investment of £1.2 million in 2026-2027 and £406,000 of recurring investment. This will support regional plans for workforce development to address skills shortages and improve access to opportunity, with a focus on workforce support, school-employer partnerships and employability and skills development. And this includes the expansion of foundation and modern apprenticeships. We also want to add to our Repair the Highland Fund, which supports reuse and repair community projects, with a further £300,000 investment proposed, building on £500,000 already agreed last year. Whilst I have outlined the administration's commitments to make the Council more financially sound, sustainable and secure, as well as our plans to invest in increasing sustainable income streams for the future, and whilst we continue our strong, active and robust but respectful representation to governments and demonstrate our willingness to work cooperatively with government departments, industry leaders, community groups and others throughout the Highlands, there continues to be a balance to strike. Whilst we know that we could simply channel all our available investment into a limited number of areas, like roads, as I've mentioned throughout this address, there are still many other areas in our Highland communities who want to see investment in other areas, and we seek to recognise and support that as best as we possibly can and as reasonably as we possibly can within the resource that's available to us. I know that there may be those who would consider that it is an irony that we still speak about raising council tax by 7%, the consideration of which as possibly one of the lower rises in Scotland, being of little comfort to those who will undoubtedly face the challenge of affordability yet investing £500,000 this year now in the Commission tackling poverty. And at the same time, we continue to consider increasing fees and charges. However, it is unfortunate that we can't hold fees and charges at current rates whilst we continue to see considerable rises in materials and in labour and in services provided to the Council and other areas of cost and price increase without asking members of our community to help us meet those cost increases. Not doing this creates budget pressures and the very service provision members of our community want us to actually deliver. Our aim is to strike the balance as best as we can. We've frozen some charges previously, but we have taken a strategic yet measured and considered approach to vary our increases in fees and charges. Person-centred at 3.8%, so CPI inflation at a given point in time. Most others at inflation plus 2%. Some specific fixed elements at 5%, and others where they are externally set or other factors at variable rates that are really out with our control. Where costs to the Council continually increase, we have sought to protect passing on increases in charges in certain areas where possible, limiting charges for services such as bereavement and school meals to inflation only. There is other evidence throughout this budget that demonstrates we have aimed to strike the balance as best as we possibly can, to deliver investment in the infrastructure that many of our communities are crying out for, continued investment in our roads, the future improvement of our school estate for our children and for their own future, at the same time as delivering the support to the most needy and vulnerable in our society who probably think less on the roads infrastructure if they could only have increased support for them and for their families in providing increased support for those with increased needs and increased challenges. Before I close, I'd like to refer to our continued commitment to working with our partners, including High Life Highland and to NHS Highland, where we continue to look to invest in the health and well-being of our communities in partnership with them. This budget seeks to do all we can and as best as we can. There will be many others that will consider otherwise, but the effort to which many have gone to deliver this budget is commendable. And I thank you, all of you, on behalf of the administration. Thank you very much, Convener.
Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Convener. Colleagues, are we pleased to hear that I'm not going to talk for that length of time. I'd like to thank Mr. Porter and his team for the support that he's given to our group in helping us coming up with our amendment, which has been circulated to you previously in the week. I always believe that a budget is not just a series of numbers, and our budget, because that's what it will become at the end of this debate, becomes the council budget. So our budget should show our values, should show what we believe in, should show what we care about, what our priorities are. And I don't think it's any wonder, and I think I pointed it out in an email that I sent round to you all, that the Liberal Democrat proposals are only 0.44% of the overall revenue budget. And when you look at budgets, we are only talking and going to be debating today at the margins of them. So the proposals, the amendments that we're putting forward are aimed to sharpen up that budget, refine it, and to what we believe, others might not, but to improve it further, to provide a more focused, targeted service. And that's what the amendment that we're putting forward today is actually aiming to do. In the report, it talks a lot about risk and the assumptions taken. And Raymond has outlined some of those, but the key ones to me are at Section 8 when it talks about the pay awards. At the moment, we're on the brink of a conflict across the world, or certainly across the Middle East, that could actually change perspectives. And we all saw before, when there was conflict, as to what it did, convener, to inflation rates, to the price of our supplies. And I think it's worth flagging up that we could be going into that situation again, where the funding assumptions that we're making today could equally change very quickly by tea time tomorrow or thereafter. The flat cash settlements from the SNP government typifies what the SNP government thinks about local government. At section 7, there's a very interesting graph that actually shows from 25, 26 through to 28, 29 that local government in real terms is going to be 500 million worse off. Raymond made reference to the fact that we've not been fully funded by the government, but that's going to continue at a dramatic pace over the next few years. Raymond also referred to the fact of the savings we made, but section 9 of the report shows that 7 million, just under 7 million savings, have had to be rebased. So those were savings from previous budgets that could not, for whatever reasons, be delivered. Were they too ambitious? Were they just not realistic? Whatever, they've had to be rebased. When we talk about the adult social care, in section 9, it talks about the 26 million overspend of adult social care. Yet at 22, 23, that was left by the previous administration as being fairly close to 3 or 4 million. So what has happened with this current administration, Councillor Fraser, that has made it be that over the period of the last 4 years, it is now 26 million overspent? It shows a lack of monitoring, a lack of control by the administration on the partners' delivery and how we work together. We need to actually make sure in the future, and paragraph 9.11 in Mr. Porter's report makes it quite clear that if we're not in control of adult social care, if we're not actually ensuring that the overspend is brought in under control, then there's going to be severe difficulties. We agree with the administration on the fiscal flexibilities of the second homes and the long-term empties. We need to be doing that to try to bring as many properties as we can back into use in Highland. It's imperative for the future of Highland and to stop depopulation that we actually manage to do that. Because if we don't, and I'm experiencing it personally at the moment with my daughter going off to Glasgow University, that she's already saying, it's great here, will I come back? So if we don't actually provide opportunities in Highland, we will see this continual drain of our younger people away through depopulation. We need to get them on the housing ladder, whether it be affordable rented, whether it be affordable purchased. We need to do all we can to ensure that there's good quality jobs for our young people here. And I would hope that we're something that we could all agree on. One of the areas where I do disagree with officers and with perhaps Raymond on this is the statement that there's no use of reserves in balancing this budget. There is use of the earmarked reserves of 21.9 million to top up to 3%. So projects that were flagship projects in the budget this time last year of community transport for 5 million have gone, renewable energy for 6 million has gone, teacher numbers for 1.7 million has gone, and that actually shows that for future years, the ability to rebase the earmarked reserves has also gone. So it sharpens us up to think, how will we balance the budget in future years? In terms of investments, as laid out on the annex by the administration, I have to admit, I agree with a lot of them. And the ones that I'm adding to it are meant to improve things further. It's to actually try to target in areas. So in the administration's proposal for the poverty initiatives, there's 500,000. We're adding to that
with our homework club, with our financial literacy proposal, with the roads, the 500,000 in the administration proposal, we're adding to it by looking at different ways to innovate. And as Raymond said, by building that partnership, by partnering up with industry to say, look, we want to look at new ways of how we do roads in Highlands. We want to look at an experiment and innovate in order to try to address it. So we're adding a further 868,000 to that proposal. If we don't do something in terms of roads, then we will never, ever catch it up. So we need to continually focus on that. And Raymond made the point, did he not, that there's other priorities other than roads, and said how good the consultation had been with people. But the consultation with people clearly shows that their major priority is in fact the roads. It's in the report, laid out there for you in black and white. And I want to just talk through some of the proposals that we want to bring forward today. We're doing something about Highland. We're calling it the Highland Education Conversation. And we're looking at how we deliver services from cradle, probably up to about the age of 30. So we're looking at early years around parenting skills. And that links into our parenting skills proposal as a separate entity, where children today are presenting to schools not fully able and ready to cope with primary or nursery environment. We want to have conversations about the secondary structure. What should that look like in terms of a management structure? And we're building into a separate proposal of having finance business partners to allow head teachers to focus on learning and being leaders of learning within their schools and within their community. It's about empowering teachers and senior educationalists to close that attainment gap, to drive up the attainment in our secondary schools. We also think it should be a holistic approach to this education conversation. It should be pan-Highland. It should be fully inclusive. So parent councils, third sector, Highland Youth Voice, Skills Development Scotland, UHI, Highland Drugs and Alcohol Partnership, all these sort of types of groups and many more that I haven't mentioned should be involved in this. This should be concluded in time to feed into the budget in 27-28. One of our other proposals talks about improving our young people's knowledge about safety in driving. We all know that we lose too many young people within Highland through fatal accidents on our roads. And what we're aiming to do here is to try to have a lot more awareness at an earlier stage before they've passed their test as to just how dangerous our roads can be, especially in winter and especially on, when our weather changes so fast. One of the proposals in our budget, which I'm really quite excited about, is the one that's done learning labs or homework clubs, where we actually want to trial with a view to rolling out a homework club a couple of nights a week in a primary school. So it provides mentors, retired teachers, retired PSAs. It provides a bit of wraparound care in case the people in these areas are wanting to work. It provides a safe learning environment. It could be linked up with the PEF funding to provide other activities. And it provides the young people and the helpers, the volunteer helpers of this, with a meal in the evening. So this addresses the poverty angle, and it provides some work that's going towards closing the attainment. So it's really a win-win. And we're not just looking at young people being there. We've got a proposal to set up a challenge fund for intergenerational activities where youth clubs, schools, community centres, the third sector can bid in for transport costs, for food, for providing activities, whether it be events, whether it be musical, whether it be drama, whether it be physical education, to actually create that link between young people and older people. Now, this might foster an interest in a career in adult social care. it would certainly foster more awareness of some of the issues that older people have to experience. And through their older people's lived experience, the young people will receive a lot of benefit and knowledge that perhaps they wouldn't normally be able to receive. One of the proposals that I raised last year, and we're bringing it back, and I make no apology for that, is the proposal on enforcement. We actually, and I actually included in the appendix to the proposal some of the stats, and you can see how low our enforcement rates are of issuing fines and tickets and penalties. And this would tackle, the whole ethos is set up a zero tolerance to these areas. So we have a zero tolerance to littering, dog filing, abandoned vehicles. I'm sure everyone here has probably had an abandoned vehicle in their ward at some point and seen how difficult it is to shift it. All the excuses come up, well, it might be owned, it might be parked there, it might be still insured, no, it's not. It might be MOT'd, no, it's not. And how difficult it is. And then the owner says they will move it and they don't. We also want to put something about poor compliance with hygiene and better enforcement on planning when someone's breaching planning. This would be a new way of looking at enforcement. And finally, on our proposals, we've got financial literacy. We need to equip every parent, every young person with financial literacy. I'm sure this will be a proposal coming out of the Poverty Commission. So let's get ahead of the game on this and actually make sure that we're in and about schools, early year settings, community centres, giving that financial literacy and advice and techniques and skills to folk in order that they can avoid some of the difficulties of debt or poor decision making in the future. Our amendments, and we're not disagreeing with a lot that's in your budget, we would hope that you'd be able to take them on board because it would create then a much more powerful, better budget, a budget for the Highlands and a budget for all, a budget for the young, the old, those challenged by poverty issues, those that are seeking to make their future in the Highlands. So all these employability factors would all interweave. I would look forward to hearing the comments maybe from Ken Gowans on our roads proposals, maybe John Finlayson on the education ones, David Fraser on the social work ones, and Graham Mackenzie on maybe some of the enforcement ones, as to see what they think of these proposals. What we want to do is create a budget that takes us forward by doing things differently. It's not a great revision to the administration's budget. It's an addition that will make it better. Thank you, Convener.
Councillor Stewart, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and keep this brief. Before I move to the substance of my amendment, I'd like to place on record my thanks to the officers for bringing forward parts of the administration's budget, because I know there's a lot of work that goes into this, but also specifically to Brian and his team for helping with my amendment and getting us to where we are. But I also want to place on record my thanks to my colleagues, Councillor Mackenzie and Bruce, Councillors Jarvie and Saggers, for the work they've done putting into developing this budget and supporting me today. It's also fair to say that there are many decent proposals actually within the administration's budget, and indeed with the amendment brought forward by the Liberal Democrat group. And I think, you know, today we can see that no one bench in this chamber has a monopoly on good ideas. There's clearly things that we can agree on across this chamber and about the scale and scope of the challenges that we face across the Highlands. However, fundamentally, members' politics is about choices, and I fundamentally cannot support a proposal that would tax hard-working Highlanders even further than they're already burdened. Across our communities, households continue to face sustained cost of living pressures, mortgage rates, food prices, fuel costs, and everyday bills remain high. At a time like this, local government must focus on protecting residents and strengthening frontline services. And that's why I've brought forward this amendment, because we believe it makes the right choices for working families, it makes the right choices for businesses, and it makes the right choices for communities across the Highlands. Because the truth is, members, every pound we spend here was first earned by someone out there. Business owners taking risks, a worker putting in the long hours, and families paying high taxes expecting this council to treat their money with respect. And that's why we propose to keep council tax low, to the increase to the minimum viable of 3.5%, which is 1.5% above the ring-fenced Highland Investment Plan investment. And for this year, we'll be doubling the proposed increase in roads, £1 million to kickstart our roads recovery and begin to start tackling the more than 30,000 defects and the 233 million maintenance backlog. Having visited our roads crews only yesterday, I know firsthand how hard they work. I've seen how they squeeze value out of every pound available. So I think we need to get behind them and back them to get our roads fixed. Our amendment would introduce free Saturday parking in our town centres to support our Highland High Street and get our businesses going again. We would deliver fully funded universal primary school meals worth over £40 per child per month for working families. We will freeze bereavement fees to protect families at their most difficult moments. We will maintain the 200% premium on second home for at least the next 2 years, while focusing action on long-term empty properties. Under these proposals, members, families across the Highlands would be up to £1,386 per year better off. That's a difference that responsible tax policy and pro-growth thinking can make to household finances. And members, this demonstrates that it is possible to support families, invest in infrastructure, protect frontline services. This demonstrates the benefits of universalism to working families and businesses across the Highlands. Now, local government doesn't create wealth. We don't make money. We spend the wealth created by the people we represent, and it's incumbent on all of us to spend it wisely. The Highlands are one of the most beautiful places in the world, and tourism is a cornerstone of that, but it must be managed properly. And that's why, members, our amendment would double the number of countryside rangers to 36, strengthening their service and ensuring there's a visible presence across our most treasured communities. Our amendment also strengthens more discretionary funds, community council grants, and ensures that the comfort scheme has an uplift as well, because that's going to support grassroots initiatives, and adding that uplift to these funds will make a difference. And importantly, as I've said, this will maintain the 200% for council tax on second homes, because as we know, members, many second homes exist for practical reasons. People who work away during the week, families who've inherited properties, or people who maintain a long-standing connection through family ties to the Highlands. And these homes are in use, and instead our policy will focus on long-term empty homes, because that is a blight on all of our communities. So to conclude, members, that the job of this council is not to grow itself, it's to deliver the essentials well and leave as much money in the pockets of the people who earned it. And this amendment, members, that delivers that approach. It backs working families, it backs Highland businesses, and it backs our communities. Because at the end of the day, we should not forget one simple truth. The engine of the Highlands is our economy. It is not this chamber, and it's the hard-working taxpayers outside it who earn the money that we spend, so we must spend it wisely. So I commend this amendment to every single member in this chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvie.
Thank you, Convener. I moved my amendment as circulated. This is to deal with the current exceptional backlog for university assessments for ADHD and autism in Highland. The waiting list within NHS Highland is nearly 2,000 children long. Many of these kids will not be seen until long after they've left school. That means going all the way through their exams without the support that they require. The proposal that I'm bringing forward is a two-pronged attack, both in the immediate and the medium term. That's first of all to bring in professionals to clear through this backlog, just to get rid of it. It is an immediate emergency, and no one can function and move forward until we actually clear what has completely blocked the system. And second, bringing in clinical researchers from Glasgow University to help redesign a new future service which can cope with the true level of demand and also bring in a lot of new innovations that have been in development recently. It's very common to hear that these conditions are overdiagnosed, but when we look at the details for ADHD, because we can actually make a prescription for it, we can actually get a true level, a true idea of the level of demand. For the last 40, 50 years, hundreds of studies internationally have shown time and time again the real incidence of ADHD in children to be between 5 and 7%, potentially up to 10, but there's a real cluster between 5 and 7%. So when we look at, there was a study just published in 2024, which broke down how many people were receiving a prescription for ADHD medication by health board area in Scotland. Within the NHS Highland area, there's 34,000 children aged 10 to 19. So knowing that the instance is between 5 and 7%, when they got all the data, we should have expected to see round about 2,500 children in Highland with a current prescription for ADHD medication. Even though there's been a doubling in demand, that doubling in demand, the real number is they only found 369 children. So we could increase that 4 or 5-fold, and we'd only then really be getting towards the numbers that we should be seeing. I have a sort of very unique role in my other job. I have work for the Mental Welfare Commission, which covers mental health across all of Scotland. For me, that's a lived experience role. So I had both a diagnosis of ADHD and what was surprising at the time, autism, just before COVID, literally 3 days. Personally, I struggled for about 2 years before that to even make the referral. I didn't think it was possible to be in the role that I was in and to have that. And I knew how bad the waiting lists were then. So I just went straight to private. I think there's many parts of my own story which speak volumes for why so many people my age never got a diagnosis. My mother keeps absolutely everything. I still have everything from school. And I actually went looking through it a couple of months ago, and I found a report from an educational psychologist when I was 7, which stated Andrew is so distractible he could distract himself sat in an empty cardboard box. But somehow, and this is where one of the areas we need to redesign, somehow, I managed to get seen by an educational psychologist from Highland Council, but that never really translated into anything on the NHS side. It was and hawed and never went anywhere. And it brings in a broader question. If we have educational psychologists within this council seeing kids, there should be a much larger role that this council is able to play within that. And rather than ping-ponging children and families between God knows how many departments, actually, how few steps can we actually take to get there? Luckily, I've almost weaponized neurodiversity. I think it's given me almost everything that I've accomplished in life. The sudden obsession to take on something new and completely drop everything. When the independence referendum kicked off, I dropped my computer science degree on the spot, moved to politics, and told my mother I'm going to stand for election. This all came in one day, and I think it took her a while to accept this was actually happening. But that's that went very far. I've played that to its conclusion, but for many, they don't get that benefit. And sure, neurodiversity in politics creates many funny stories. There's sentences of my life that contain words that don't belong to each other, like how I was late to meet the Queen because I got distracted on my way and ended up on the House of Commons terrace drinking cocktails with Bill Bailey. That should never happen. But for many, they never get to see that. The impact this has across society, where half of prisoners have ADHD undiagnosed, 30% of people in mental health services have undiagnosed neurodiversity. This has impacts through all of society that we have to address urgently. So I move the amendment and I seek for a report on the next steps to come to the soonest future council meeting. Thanks.
Councillor Fraser.
Thank you very much, and my thanks to Brian and his team for all the work in developing helping us develop the budget. Today I want to focus on social care mainly. As noted in paragraph 6.3, COSLA had lobbied for £750 million of additional spending for social care across Scotland, and that has not been forthcoming. Table 5 on page 13 of the report indicates planned real-term increases in Scottish Government spend on health and social care and social justice. However, that is for services largely delivered by the NHS and the Scottish Prison Service, and excludes the core services provided by the Council. Therefore, we are facing real-term cuts in our grant funding over the coming years. Councillor Christie talked about the increasing gap in adult social care costs. The challenges in social care do not stand still. For instance, the number of people aged 75 plus in the Highlands has increased by 78% since 2001. It's set to increase by a further 34% by 2028. In recent years, the Council's budget provision for adult social care has been rising faster than our overall budget, as we put more money into that. The warning in paragraph 911 and the comment on sufficiency of reserves is very clear. Without an alignment of expenditure and budget, there is an ongoing risk to the Council. The NHS and Highland Council have developed recovery models that are designed to deliver long-term savings and improved outcomes. However, bringing about these changes requires investment. Table 9.6 demonstrates that the budget will introduce 19 million of additional funding. That includes a £7 million increase in funding for cost recovery, change and transformation. I'm greatly encouraged by the way the Council, NHS Highland and all our partners are working together to improve outcomes, deliver improved value for money. We're starting to see progress in several areas. The budget proposals allow that work to continue. The oversight of the adult social care budget is by the Joint Monitoring Committee. As Joint Chair of that committee, I've already written to the Chief Execs of NHS Highland and Highland Council regarding the need for improved financial control. Turning now to the NDAS proposal by Councillor Jarvie. I'm sure members will be aware of the long waiting lists for these assessments. I really welcome the proposal put forward as it seeks to not only address the immediate needs, but by working with internationally renowned specialists, it seeks to deliver a sustainable solution to prevent waiting lists from building up again. Members may be aware that the NDAS service is an NHS responsibility, and they may wonder why the Council should look to fund this. Firstly, undertaking these assessments will have immediate benefits for children and families who have been waiting. Where appropriate, it will mean they can access specialist, potentially transformational support. In terms of the Council's responsibilities, the positive impacts of this will be felt in education and children's services and our integrated service for younger adults with additional support needs. This is all about intervening upstream, using resources in a preventative way to develop capacity, confidence, capability, and in so doing will also reduce crisis and long-term dependence. This aligns with our model of changing how services are delivered and improving outcomes. I do feel that the proposal requires further development by officers working with NHS, allied professionals, as well as procurement and commissioning. On that basis, I'm happy to second the amendment by Councillor Jarvie and ask that officials bring a detailed proposal that can be considered at a meeting of full council, ideally in March, and I will be supporting the budget. Thank you.
Councillor Finlayson.
Thank you, Convener. Members, I think we all know the importance of today's meeting and the responsibility that we all share in terms of setting a balanced budget, whilst also supporting Highland communities and addressing responsibly the budget gap that Highland and all other local authorities are tackling at this time due to different pressures. However, what must also be recognised is the amount of time that is taken to set this budget and the support we have received from Brian and his teams and also senior officers and their teams. And I think it's important that we realise that this budget is one that we have considered and engaged with communities over. To this end, I'd like to thank Brian and his team and all other senior officers for their hard work and engagement with members over many months, and it does take many months to set a budget. And I think the budget that we have in front of us is a very good budget. Looking at the proposals in front of us today, I'm particularly pleased to note the investments outlined in Annex 4, which address the key areas of poverty and equality, roads maintenance, community investment, and support for pupils and their families through additional PEF funding, with an extra top-up that is there to support those children and families most in need through a wider ASG partnership approach. Other proposals in the budget also show that the Council is listening to our communities, when areas like war discretionary funds, community council funding and comfort scheme uplifts are being supported, as these are areas, as local members we know, are brought to us almost every month at community council meetings. All of this, of course, builds on the other recurring funding agreed in March 2025, which will continue to support care and respite, ASN, Countryside Rangers and many other key areas. We all appreciate the real pressures that are being faced and will be faced in so many areas, including, as has already been mentioned, adult social care. And that is why partnership working is so important. And this is also reflected in the administration's budget and the work being done with NHS Highland to provide an additional $5 million in recognition of cost pressures when delivering services is, I'm sure, welcomed by everyone. Members, as is the reality for every local authority, some savings and efficiencies required to be made, so the Council can continue to meet its statutory obligations and continue to deliver core services, while facing the constraints and pressures that come from inflation, pay rises, healthcare pressures, and many other unforeseen challenges. But today's paper, I think, shows clearly that Highland Council is meeting these challenges head-on, whilst also managing to propose a lower council tax rise than all of our neighbouring local authorities, to make sure we still invest in communities through the Highland Investment Plan and other key strategies that continue to drive forward transformation and growth. In terms of education, I can happily report that proposed savings are limited, and those identified account for a mere 0.5% of the total budget, while the total of new council funding for additional PEF, My Highland Future, curriculum development, employability, support for ASN and out-of-authority educational placements totals nearly $3 million, another very positive proposal. So, members, in light of the many positives that can be seen in today's budget paper, in light of continued investment to support key strategic infrastructure, poverty and inequality, schools and young people, communities and the funding they receive, and of course our legislative responsibility to set a balanced budget, I recommend the budget proposals in this paper to you, and I trust that right across the Chamber, the responsible but still aspirational approaches outlined are supported as we look to improve the lives of people living within all our Highland communities. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell-Sinclair.
Thank you, Convener. Convener, fellow members, and also to all the members of our Highland community. I rise today in strong support of the budget and within the budget the Highland Investment Plan. Today we are not simply agreeing a set of figures on a page, we are agreeing our priorities for the people of the Highlands. The Highland Council Budget 2026 is a responsible, balanced and forward-looking plan that protects essential services while investing in the future. Across the Highlands, from the city of Inverness to our rural and island communities, residents expect us to deliver quality education, reliable infrastructure, social care that protects the vulnerable, and action on climate and economic resilience. This budget does exactly that. First, this budget safeguards frontline services. At a time when councils across Scotland face significant financial pressures, we have worked constructively within the settlement provided by the Scottish Government to prioritise what matters most. We have protected funding for our schools, ensuring children and young people continue to benefit from high-quality teaching, additional support when required, and well-maintained learning environments. Secondly, this budget recognises the unique geography and challenges of the Highlands. Delivering services across one of the largest local authority areas in the UK requires careful financial stewardship. We are investing in roads and transport connectivity, essential not just for convenience but for safety, economic development and tackling isolation. The Highlands have always been defined by reliance, identity and community. Under the leadership of the Highland Council, we have the opportunity not simply to maintain services, but to transform them, to invest in schools, strengthen communities and deliver housing. Firstly, schools. Investment in education is investment in opportunity. Modern, well-equipped schools provide more than classrooms. They create safe environments where young people can thrive academically, socially and emotionally. By upgrading our facilities, improving digital infrastructure and ensuring sustainable buildings, we are giving our children the best possible foundation. This is not expenditure, this is a long-term economic strategy. Secondly, communities. Strong communities are the backbone of Highland. Investment in community hubs, transport links and shared public spaces combats rural isolation and supports well-being. When we strengthen community infrastructure, we enable local businesses to grow, families to stay and volunteers to flourish. This plan recognises that prosperity is not measured only in numbers, but in quality of life. And lastly, housing. Affordable, sustainable housing is essential to retaining our workforce and supporting economic growth. Without accessible homes, we risk losing key workers, young families and future generations. By prioritising housing delivery, the Highland Investment Plan addresses depopulation, supports regeneration and ensures that the Highlands remains a place where people can live, work and build their future. Pods or hubs, whatever you want to call it. Pods represent smart, flexible infrastructure designed to deliver services more efficiently, whether through modular facilities, co-located services or adaptable community spaces. Pods will allow us to respond quickly to demographic changes while maintaining fiscal responsibility. They are the most practical solution for a geographically vast region like ours. We will not stand still. Delayed investment today leads to greater costs tomorrow, financially and socially. The Highland Investment Plan is a proactive response, ensuring sustainability, resilience and opportunity. Let us all choose progress. Let us all choose investment over stagnation, and let us demonstrate confidence in our Highlands and in the people who call this remarkable region home. Thank you.
That's Isabel Mackenzie.
Thank you, Convener. Just to say thank you to the team behind the scene on this, and to Mr. Porter. I wanted to just re-emphasise about the adult social care, and as I'm one of the 3 champions for Highland, this budget has to recognise that the Highlands, as you all know, has one of the fastest ageing population in Scotland, and we have to address this continually, and it is a high risk, it is constant financial burden, but it means the real strategic priority is not simply managing pressure in adult social care, but investing, I believe, in prevention and ageing well. We have to support people to remain independent as long as possible, to be as active and safe in their own homes for longer. That needs to be addressed. Our group also has highlighted the importance of fairness for residents on fixed incomes, particularly at difficult times in life. And for that reason, we believe bereavement fees should be frozen, ensuring families, many of whom are older, themselves are faced with additional financial pressures during a period of loss and vulnerability. We need to focus on community support and accessible housing with adaptations. We need to look at early intervention and local care services, but we also need to reduce a long-term demand on hospitals and high-cost care, which is what is contributing to the high cost of the budget for adult social care. So I would be seeking that we must all work together and look at a short, medium, long-term strategy, because the challenge is the council is to move from a model that reacts to crisis to one that plans strategically for longevity for our older generation, ensuring older people can live well with dignity across Highland communities. Thank you.
Councillor Graham Mackenzie.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you to Brian for the report. And in particular, I really want to thank the officers in communities in place for the diligent and comprehensive manner in which they've gone about setting out our proposals and have attempted to be innovative in the process. I'm going to deal solely with community and places. And when we set out to establish a rationale for our proposals, we looked at the things that we felt we had to increase in order to avoid budget pressures. We looked to listen to the community feedback from stakeholders, including members, and we sought to find ways in which we can improve income generation. So I'll start with where we felt we had to increase fees, which are roughly in line with inflation. We've made a small increase in layer and interment fees following a freeze last year. After the refurbishment, so that is in year 2 on, after the refurbishment of the crematorium, we shall increase the attended cremation fees in line with CPI. There will be an increased fee for triple death layer fee, which is currently the same as a double. In waste services, there is an RPI increase in the collection of commercial waste, but there will be no increase in the cost of household brown bin garden waste collections. We have attempted to respond to the concerns of community councils and have doubled the core grants provided. We have listened to the concerns of members and the requests coming through from community groups and have increased the ward discretionary grant allocations by £5,000. We have also been able to show our appreciation of comfort scheme providers by increasing the grant allocation for the first time. Given the arrival of 15 new waste collection fleet vehicles, there is scope to reduce the fleet size by 2 vehicles. The new vehicles will be less likely to break down, and there will be reduced MOT costs, leading to a saving of £350,000. The size of our fleet will be kept under review and adapted as additional house building comes on stream. Following a roads and amenities redesign, the restructure should identify efficiencies, leading to a saving of £60,000. The thrust of the rest of our proposals lies in income generation. We shall commercialise the workshop in Fort William by developing an MOT station offering services to the public and others. We shall move HGV driver CPCs, and that is a certificate of performance, professional competency, training in-house through training an officer to deliver, as well as offering this type of training to others. We will use our stores to supply goods to offer to other public bodies and businesses as an income stream. We will share our car club scheme with NHS Highland, which will see us use a pay-per-use procedure and therefore increase fleet utilisation. We shall also provide food hygiene courses after a successful pilot scheme in Sutherland. And in addition to that, we will offer play park installations on a commercial basis, all designed to generate income and to avoid cuts where possible. I hope members can agree that we have presented a pragmatic and yet positive set of proposals for your consideration. Thank you.
Councillor Balance.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Brian, and your team for all the work that's gone into this. Could I start by quoting the new MP for Manchester, Gorton and Denton? I can't resist it. Greens work to get things done. We're not interested in proposing nonsense in pursuit of headlines. Hi, Rory. We aim to make change. So, Raymond, when you said that your door was open to opposition parties to discuss budget proposals, we took you at your word, and we're grateful to you and the convener for the friendly, occasionally frank, discussions. We asked for a continuation of last year's Green Win on seasonal access ranges and maintenance of our long-distance paths, and are delighted to see that. We asked for an increase in ward discretionary budgets, and were told that that was already planned. We recognise the value of local community groups, and I hope that all members will welcome that increased spending. Last year, we secured money for community groups to run repair cafes, events which bring together members of the community with repair skills with people who have goods needing repair, to share skills within the community, bring people together, and reduce waste. Make, do and mend is an old slogan, but it's an old truth with value for today as we move away from the throwaway society. It was planned to have 4 funding rounds, but it was so popular that most of the fund was spent in round 1. So it is right that it has been topped back up to the original level. We are glad to see the £500,000 set aside for initial measures to address the Poverty and Equality Commission's findings. We looked for extra support for community transport. We understand that savings in current contract fees will enable that, and we hope to see that. We get numerous planning conditions for biodiversity net gain, but we have no way of ensuring that these BNG areas will be protected in the future. So we're delighted with the increased investment in planning resource so that we can database and map all these biodiversity net gain areas so they can be protected. And since impact assessments came in, 81 proposals have identified climate change impacts, but staff resources have meant that only 11 have actually been done. So we have asked for extra resource to enable that. And I thank you, Raymond, for confirming that. I don't really have time to address the opposition amendments. I accept that there is much of interest and worthy of consideration in the Lib Dem, in some of the Lib Dem amendments. But I need to close by saying we didn't get all that we asked for by any means. More investment in active travel and home insulation in particular. But we believe that constructive negotiations is better than chasing headlines, and we thank you, convener and leader, for your willingness to engage. There is, on balance, just enough in this budget to persuade us to vote for it. Thank you.
Councillor Oldham.
Yes, thank you, convener, and thank you to Brian for his team for the work on the budget, also the wider team of officers for their support. I should also thank the leader, whose his comprehensive speech this morning will make mine somewhat shorter than planned. This is a strong budget, and we start to see the outcomes from the Highland Investment Plan, which is particularly welcome. We've recently appointed our preferred contractors for Beauty and Dingwall and other projects. We've done all that while proposing a council tax increase of 7%, which puts us in the bottom third of councils across Scotland. The other thing I think that I should highlight, because this is also part of this item, is the medium-term financial plan, which means we're not only looking at the budget for this year, we're looking forward to the next 3 years. I don't know whether you've seen it in your mailboxes this morning, but the Accounts Commission has mailed us all this morning to talk about Shetland. Shetland now have a £134 million budget gap by 2029-2030. And because of our medium-term financial plan, we're in a much better situation than they are. So that's all good. So looking forward, wearing my Corporate Resources Committee hat, one of our big roles is budget monitoring. I'll draw your attention to the financial strategy for services, Annex 9A, which gives the lead for senior leadership in that regard. And also, I should just highlight yet again, I know I keep banging on about it, but it's very true, the new accounts software which we have means that all our budget holders at all levels now have visibility in real time of how they're doing against their budgets, which I think is important and should allow us to keep control of our budgets for the year. Moving forwards, if you look at 16.3, we're talking about putting £900,000 into an improved HR and payroll system, which will let's do the same on that side. Will make possible better data analysis, enable us to plan our workforce better, while reducing boring, repetitive work for HR staff. Also in that area, in 16.2, we have the future operating model. That's going to bring the council closer to people in more rural parts of the Highlands through mobile delivery, which is not done before. We've already got recruiting underway for that, and I'm told that we're getting a lot of people interested in those jobs. So I'm looking forward to that rolling out so that people in the more remote parts of the Highlands can actually talk to an officer rather than having to phone up or do by email. Anyway, it's going to be a long day, and I think I've said enough already. I commend this budget and the medium-term financial plan to members. Thank you.
Councillor Ryan McIntosh.
Thank you, convener, and thank you for the officers writing up this budget. Among the Highlands, we have roughly 3,369 second homes and 2,466 long-term empty properties. That's 5,835 homes which could have been utilised to give many families a place to live. Instead, these homes are left to rot away in our communities or boost the pockets of the wealthy. Even in my own backyard, there is an empty property lying derelict for over 4 years now, with no signs of being sold or utilised. This is becoming a common sight among many people across my ward, across the Highlands. The Wealth and Asset Survey 2018 to 2020 shows that owners with more than one property are overall, on average, wealthier, with higher incomes compared to those households with only a sole ownership or no ownership at all. I'm glad that the Council will be increasing the council tax further on both long-term properties and second homes with the intention of improving availability of housing within local communities. Already we have seen that with an additional increase on council tax among second homes and long-term properties, 9% of those properties have gone back on the market to be made available for potential families. Thank you very much.
Councillor Gowans.
Thank you, Convener. Members, across the Highlands, our economy and infrastructure support every community, every business and every household in Highland. They shape our everyday lives and influence the confidence that investors have in our region. Today, I want to outline just some of the practical and forward-looking steps that we are taking to strengthen the framework and secure an even more resilient, prosperous and future for Highland. We begin from a position of financial stability, supported by clear forecasts over the next 2 years, and crucially, this balanced position is achieved without using reserves, providing long-term financial health so we continue to invest where it matters most. One of the strongest tools supporting the investment is the continued 2% earmarking of the council tax. This provides guaranteed long-term funding for improvements that we need. It delivers around £120 million over the next 2 years. This will support borrowing and capital investment, helping to drive an estimated £2.1 billion programme over the next 20 years. We are also modernising how we deliver major projects. Revised capital staff recharge multiplier increases both capacity and efficiency to enable £10 million of investment in a multi-year financial plan, delivering infrastructure improvements more effectively for our communities. Nowhere is this investment more visible or more essential than in our roads. That's why we're committing an additional £500,000 to roads revenue maintenance on top of the very significant capital investment already. This additional funding helps us keep pace with rising material costs, deliver more resurfacing and repairs and strengthen our resilience during the severe winter and storm events, improvements that our residents will genuinely see and feel. It will take time to see significant improvement in our Highland roads, but it's one of the main priorities for this administration. Our focus for the future investment has to contribute to faster recovery of our roads infrastructure at this time. We can recognise ongoing research underway by others and feed into the Council's redesign process, perhaps contributing to our own data sets and evaluate the outcomes of the process in the context of Highland. In addition, we are also investing in skills and opportunities such as My Highland Future programme, with over £1.6 million of combined funding supporting apprenticeships, employer partnerships and pathways to work. By ensuring that businesses can access the skills they need, it ensures that people, especially young people, can build a bright future right here in Highland. We are nurturing the green economy too. The Repair Highland Fund, boosted by an additional £300,000, supports community-led environment and circular economy projects. These innovative schemes reduce waste and will also create new local opportunities. Together, these measures form part of the Council's coherent and ambitious programme for economic prosperity. They reflect the priorities that our communities tell us matter, and they deliver long-term benefit, not short-term fixes. So to conclude, when we invest in infrastructure, we invest in people. When we invest in efficiency, we strengthen resilience. And when we invest in skills, we grow our economy. And when we invest in communities, we invest in the future of the Highlands. By taking these steps now, carefully and confidently, we are building a more connected, dynamic and sustainable region, one that supports all our communities throughout Highland. Thank you.
Councillor Rees.
Thank you very much. I have one specific question. I did try to get answers for this, but unfortunately officers were only able to get me an answer yesterday. It's the Saving People 7, which is the school crossing patrollers, where there's a saving of £263,000 specified and roughly 6 full-time equivalent posts. I think that many lollipop ladies and men work maybe 6 hours a week, so you could be talking about 30 odd jobs, and I would ask for more detail which schools are going to be affected, because the saving does not specify which schools. Councillor Campbell-Sinclair made a good point. You talked, Glynis, about the quality of life. I thought that was that was a telling phrase. And for small children who do not have a vote, there are a few things better in quality of life than seeing a friendly lollipop person waiting at the side of the road to see them safely across it. So I would like more information on that, if possible, please. If I had more time, I would sing the praises of the budget of more length, but I don't have time, so that's my get out of jail card. There are a lot of good things in this budget, there really are. Councillor Balance mentioned quite a few of the ones that I had in mind. However, buried in the Council's new website, members, you may have come across the results of the latest independent Scottish Road Maintenance Conditions Survey results that were published in January 26. And I'm not sure that these have been advertised widely or at all. Roads are graded, in case you don't know, red, amber or green. I'm not going to hit you with lots of stats because I don't have time, but for our A roads, 31% are graded red or amber. And go to the U roads, the unclassified roads, 43% of the roads are graded red or amber. So that gives us an idea of how much of a problem we are confronting. And the gap between what we are spending and what we should be spending to stop the rot is approximately £1 million each month. The leader talked about a sustained increase in roads investment, but I checked back with our finance department as far back as they could go. I got lots of figures for the last 5 years, but the best phrase of all in the advice I was given was that the expenditure has been fairly consistent. It may be up a bit, it may be down a bit, just like the price of bitumen and tar and materials goes up and down. I don't think we can quibble about whether or not it's slightly more or slightly less. I think it's pointless. Last night I was at the quarterly meeting of the Association of Caithness Community Councils held in Wick. The message from them was loud and clear. We're not spending enough. I have to be balanced about this. 10 years ago, the leader is correct. Expenditure was less. There were other compelling arguments that won the day in those times. But 10 years ago, £1,000 bought an awful lot more bitumen or tar than it does nowadays. I don't think the 9-year council tax freeze helped our hand very much, and nor did inflation. Councillor Gowans, Ken, you came out with so far the understatement, I think, of the meeting. You said it will take time to see improvements. At the moment, with what we're spending, let's be clear about it, the roads are continuing to drop. We need to spend an extra £1 million a month just to stop that rot. So it's more like Never Never Land. I go on about roads a lot, but we're here to represent what people are saying to us at things like community council meetings. And in some parts of Highland, not all, the roads are a considerable concern. And I noticed from other council papers, the areas with the most problems, not surprisingly, are Skye, Loch Arbour and Caithness. In fact, there are quite drastic contradictions among different parts of Highland. I'm not sure what that's a reflection of, but the administration also deserve credit for making sure some of the money has been redirected to areas with the worst problems. And, it's great being an independent. I can genuinely give praise where praise is due, and that part of what the work that's been done is really good. But I cannot get away from the simple fact we are not spending enough even to stop the roads, the pavements, the bridges and the culverts from deteriorating. I'd like to have an answer altogether. I don't, but I just think the funding formula at COSLA needs to be looked at, and I really would urge the administration to go cap in hand or whatever to the government and start robustly arguing the case for more investment for Highland, please. Thank you.
Matthew, with respect to crossing patrollers, I believe that you and Councillor Finlayson were given quite extensive details yesterday, and you cannot expect us to name individual places where members of staff may no longer be required.
Convener, I totally accept that point. I didn't really get anything detailed. I did get some helpful bullet points, but I wasn't expecting individual. But I was simply drawing attention that it would be helpful to have a bit more clarity. Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh, Andrew.
Thank you, Convener. Can I also thank the Financial Office staff and the administration officers for pulling this together. Also a thanks to our council leader and our convener for inviting us to make comment, not just in the last few weeks, but actually throughout many months. They have, of course, studiously ignored it, but that's the option. There's much to commend in this, much that's acceptable, even grudgingly commend in this budget. It has been a difficult budget to pull together, given the Scottish Government's lack of respect or even knowledge of the job done by local authorities. We have an ever-increasing amount of money in real terms. Even the modest increase we have this time is not enough to pull forward. And I think the administration is to be commended for still trying to commit to making the future better for people in Highland. There are still huge gaps that only money will fix. We're not a huge Labour contingent in this council. Had a meeting in a phone box and decided that there'd be no major amendments going forward. Lots of amendments at this time come because of the group's political stance or pet projects. And I think there's a lot in this budget which is of a persuasion that we would like. There is a lot going forward to help make life better for people in the Highlands. And that would be the Labour wish if we were able to take that forward. There will be one small amendment coming from my colleague about continuing the development of tourism in Inverness by utilising the Upper Bridge Street beauty that we have there. But I will leave him to forward that. We have serious, before I do forget, a thank you for the 500,000, not coming to me, but I'll be quite happy with 4.5, towards the recommendations of the Poverty Commission. That shows a commitment in real terms that we had when the Commission was set up. And I hope that our recommendations will be worthy of this commitment from you. Two, you already jumped ahead. You have taken plans to take services out on the road, as it were, which I think will be one of the recommendations from the Poverty Commission. I think that's a great thing. We recommend, we accept that we have the services, but getting people to it is a problem. The public transport is a very non-funny joke in the Highlands. And going out to people is one way of achieving that. We have real problems with adult social care that will only be solved when the Scottish Government realises their responsibility as much, if not more, than ours. So far, I think we are quite happy to pass the baton to us There will be big fiscal decisions have to be made, and they are studiously avoiding doing that. Chromebooks, as my one little bugbear in this, is that we're putting all the payment for repairs onto the schools. We do say in the budget that Chromebooks are a key tool for learning, just like textbooks. We don't ask schools to fork out extra money for repair and replacement of that. I think repair, if we're going to give out the Chromebooks, and I think we're the only people in Scotland who do, despite SNP promises to give everybody a free Chromebook, that has gone the same way as free bikes. I think we have to accept that there will be costs in repairing them and not put them on as an extra burden on schools, which can only affect the quality of education given by that school as their budget is. I ask you to look at that, to keep reviewing it, because I don't think you're going to drop it from here, but I think we need to keep an eye on it, that it does not become an overburden to them. Yep, like I said, there's much that is commendable here. There are more financial pressures to come. The shenanigans in the Middle East will come back to bug us. I don't know how I'll vote for it or not. We'll see. Thank you.
Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Convener. Well, election season is upon us, and we were all braced for a good helping of electioneering today. Councillor Balance mentioned that he didn't have time to comment on the Tory budget in his contribution, so I will. The Tory group budget document reads less like a well-thought-out, costed budget proposal and more like a hurriedly pulled-together populist election leaflet for Rory Stewart. It's even got Rory's lovely picture on the front page. It's a shame Councillor Stewart's common sense doesn't extend to being able to spell common sense.
Point of order.
It's good to see that the SNP still lives
Hold
through...
on, please. The member has raised a point of order. And I'm sure the member would not have said that had she realised.
Yeah, please accept my apologies, Rudy. It's good to see that the SNP still lives rent-free inside the Tories' heads, though. This Tory group budget proposal mentions the SNP more often than it mentions the Conservative and Unionist Party. It's presented as the Scottish Conservative and Unionist group budget, so I assume it's been agreed by everyone in the Tory group, including Councillor Stewart's fellow Holyrood candidate, Councillor Crawford, who can't be here today to support our party's budget proposals. There's so much to pick apart here, but I only have a few minutes, so I'll focus on the most astounding part of the document. A proposal that will be greeted with a horror in mine and Councillor Crawford's ward. Today, exactly a month after the Fenelon planning decision, the Tory group are proposing to cut almost £750,000 from the council's planning budget. They're suggesting we cut £750,000 from planning by removing in-house specialists that scrutinise planning proposals to provide expert advice on things like forestry, ecology, flood risk, and crucially transport planning. Not only that, but the Tories are suggesting that community councils pick up the slack. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Crawford, and the rest of the Tory group are suggesting that our hard-working, unpaid volunteer community councillors are equipped to provide or instruct the specialist scrutiny that almost 20 council-paid specialists currently provide. This is unbelievably naive, demonstrates a misunderstanding of the planning system and a misunderstanding of what our community councils need and want. Community councils want more support with planning matters. That's why the administration are proposing an increase to planning funding. They don't need a £750,000 worth of cuts to the council's planning support functions. The Tories suggest the cuts will speed up planning decisions, when in reality it will shift the responsibility for technical policy-based scrutiny from paid council specialists to communities councils, who are already on their knees trying to deal with the increasing onslaught of highly technical and complex large-scale planning applications. Community councils are already having to resort to instructing their own planning lawyers to help draft legally competent and relevant objections. But their lawyers can do that at the moment with reference to all of the in-house specialist reports. By removing those in-house specialists, community councils will have to instruct a lawyer and experts in ecology, archaeology, flood risk, forestry, transport planning, and so on. Either that or the council would have to instruct external experts on a case-by-case basis at significantly higher cost than retaining in-house teams. The whole Tory group document is fantasy land, but this proposal in particular is financially illiterate and tone deaf, and we should give it the short shrift that it deserves.
Members, can we have a short comfort break? 10 minutes, come back at 22, please. Councillor Gregson.
Thank you, Convener. Very briefly, following my telephone box partner words from the socialist wing of the room, I won't address the budget more widely, which seems to me is very competent and gives us, as Councillor Oldham indicated, a medium-term financial plan of some quality, which allows me to focus on a possible application of some earmarked reserves, which the strategy is, of course, to use earmarked reserves for change, transformation and investment. And so my proposal, and for which I should thank officers, particularly Brian, for guidance on this one, proposal is, and it's in the chat, it's 0.8 million to carry out a scoping and feasibility exercise relating to Upper Bridge Street in Inverness. The fact is we have a magnificent and striking Inverness Castle project, and the council is to be commended, along with its partners, for the work which has achieved a magnificent building, which is now a great experience. It's very much a signpost to the wider Highlands, and as the gateway to the Highlands, I think Inverness could do better than the way Upper Bridge Street is. You're approaching Inverness from the west, and you certainly come round from the A9, A96. Upper Bridge Street, built in 1971, is a brutalist mess. It's a great carbuncle in a wonderful riverside location. And what I'm suggesting is that we have a short-term, as I say, feasibility and scoping exercise to complement the work on the castle, which now exposes in all its ugliness the deficiencies of Upper Bridge Street. And something needs to be done about this. This is a great opportunity for social, environmental and economic benefits. There are a number of options there. I've lent heavily on the work of Alan Maguire, who's a tremendous servant of the council, and his 2019 work includes, and it's in the chat there attached to my proposal, it includes proposals for potential funding sources out with the council, depending on which option was to be selected. The exercise 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago, for options for reuse, reimagining and renewal. We commissioned LDN architects, and they came up with a number of potential funding sources which may or may not apply in 2026, but certainly over the next 2 years, I'm looking for this study which complements the excellent budget paper that we have today and also the work on the castle. So this is a proposal for a scoping exercise for Upper Bridge Street to be developed as a better gateway to the Highlands than we have at present. Thanks.
Councillor Atkin.
Thank you
Convener, and I just want to thank everyone who's involved in the months of work that has been used to produce this budget. I'm going to speak with my housing property hat on today. Much of what I was going to say has already been said, so I won't repeat it. But for many people in the Highlands, the situation with housing is not viewed as a challenge, it's viewed as a crisis. And every member here will have a story to tell of somebody in their community absolutely desperate for housing. It's worth reminding the housing challenge is about addressing a critical shortage of affordable and market rate housing of all types and tenures. However, it is about more than a business as usual market approach to increasing supply. It's a strategic initiative with multiple proactive strands, and the Council has a pivotal role to play in making things happen. We've undertaken a call for sites with an impressive response. We're developing our own mid-market rental model. Following the Badenoch and Strathspey's lead, other wards with an evident similar prevalence of short-term lets are now progressing their opportunity to exercise control. More wards are likely to follow. Another piece in this strategic jigsaw is addressing the issue of long-term empty homes. We know Highland is the highest in Scotland in terms of percentage, and that's frankly a league table that nobody wants to be top of. 3.12% of Highland homes were recorded as long-term empties in 2024, and the combined figure of long-term empties and second homes has already been referenced by the Greens earlier, and that is a lot of houses. So we are using the council tax flexibilities to increase premiums on second homes and long-term empties, but it's important to stress that this is a plan with a purpose, a much wider purpose. The Housing Challenge Fund will provide grants and loans to incentivise bringing empty properties back into use as affordable homes to rent or potentially homes for sale. So what we're hoping to create is a virtuous circle. So it's a plan to kickstart a process of change and to shift the dial. And Councillor Christie did reference, the budget has to be about priorities. Well, our priorities in this space has to be about homes in our communities for our people. One final point. In my 4 years as an elected representative, I know there's little that makes people angrier than an empty house, apart from possibly the roads. This is as true of our own housing stock as any that's privately owned. So I am acutely aware of the need to lead by example on this issue. There will be public expectation to do so if this measure is supported. Obviously, I will be supporting the budget, and I just wanted to say a thank you to Councillor Jarvie, actually, on the NDAS and the waiting list, because I have, young people in my ward whose parents are frankly terrified that they're going to go into adult life without a diagnosis, because if with a diagnosis, you avoid problems with employment, relationships, tenancies, etc., etc. So I think your proposal is quite inspiring, and I'm fully in support of it. That's just my personal view. Thank you.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you very much, Convener. You caught me unaware there. First of all, big thank you to Brian and his team for this budget. It's been excellent, actually. And I'm going to concentrate. Forgive me for sitting down, but I broke my glasses at the weekend. If I stand up, I can't see you, and I have to use this glasses to read. I'm going to concentrate on the community investment part of it. And I was actually delighted to see what was in it. I sort of knew some of the things that were going to go into it, but I was delighted to see that it was in response to public feedback over the many years, and it's great. And it also aligns with what's happening with the Poverty Commission at the moment. So there's been a lot of engagement with community groups, agencies and officers throughout the Highlands, and what's here in the investment package is absolutely brilliant. And I think when we, as commissioners, report back in June to the Council, we'll be able to see some, hopefully, actions that we want to follow through on. And having that funding there will help no end. But PEF funding, this is great. Expanding opportunities for children, very welcome. And I think the welfare team is the best positioned to efficiently administer this fund. And the increase in the ward discretionary budget, going up by £5,000, brilliant and not before time. This increase is expected, no, sorry, let me change that wording. This increase will enable community groups to engage in projects. Hopefully, there is potential for further incremental increases in future years, fingers crossed. The Comfort Scheme. As a director of one of the social enterprises who provides such facilities, this is very welcome. And I think it's worth maybe saying that visitors often termed NC 500 as no conveniences 500. So the implementation of this come April is great. And I see that there's a 3-year agreement. So no flash in the pan, excuse the pun. Community councils core grant will be doubled. Wow, I can't wait to go to the next community council meeting. This will be most welcome by them because by the time they pay their insurance, they've virtually got next to nothing to work with. So this will be good and most welcome. And as a member of the climate change, my fellow councillor behind me, Kate Willis, is probably having a wee laugh at the moment. It would be remiss of me not to mention the Repair and Highlands Fund. This programme being expanded is great to see, and supporting community-led repair, reuse, upcycling, it's so important. We have to reduce waste and we have to actually change mindsets out there. And would you believe we have a repair cafe, I think it's next week or the week after, but I'm taking my record player along. It's been out of commission for about 1.5 years, and I actually thought of just dumping it, but I'm not. I'm going to get it repaired. So all of these community investments at grassroots, they are just so important to communities and the people in the communities. And that's what we should be looking to. And finally, there are experts out there in various environments who carefully craft ideas and proposals designed to influence our behaviour and decisions. Alistair, you may have a talent as a political influencer, and I think they could be quite lucrative. As the shaping of the narrative throughout your proposals play heavily on doing just that, subjects which are very emotive. I did read each of the proposals and then I reread them and I came to the conclusion, right, okay. However, in deeper reading, I just felt that it lacked some workable areas, and also there was practicalities that I could see could have a problem. I'm winding up. Okay, to be candid, the proposals I feel are more like brainstorming ideas and need a bit more refinement. Thank you.
Let's all hope that your record player takes 78s.
I think it does, actually.
Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you very much for the report, Brian, and thank you to your team for all the hard work that's gone into creating this budget is much appreciated. And there are a lot of very, very positive things in the budget, and I'm happy to support the majority of it. A couple of points I'd like to make, though. With regard to Strategic Fund 5 on page 77, income generation and referring to school meals. It's been discussed at the Poverty Commission sessions and at the Redesign Board that the importance of school meals cannot be overemphasised. At the Redesign Board, school meals have been a regular focus, looking at how we can encourage children to take them. And we all know the importance of a good diet and the ability of children to concentrate if they are well fed. So it seems counterintuitive to increase the cost of school meals at this time when we're actively trying to encourage the uptake of them. That said, I recognise that the cost of providing school meals has increased with food inflation, and I equally understand that it comes as a cost to the Council. That being the case, while I do not want to raise an amendment, I would ask that we use some of the Poverty Commission funding to mitigate the cost of school meals and avoid an increase for the year ahead. This will not make a huge impact on that funding, but would show our commitment to ensure that school meals are affordable for all. On another issue, I would also like to refer to item 22 on page 120, and I'm concerned that we are proposing to reduce the workforce even by a small number when we simply don't have the resource in place to fulfil our commitments to improve our roads. It seems strangely contradictory to cut staff when we are investing £500,000 in additional funding into improving our roads. It also seems strange to cut staff when in many areas across the Highlands we cannot recruit roads workers, and I know that in Southern we have a number of vacancies. Also, looking at place 26 on page 124, I welcome the proposal to purchase our own equipment, and I agree that this will help to reduce hire charges and the need to bring in contractors. However, I have concerns that as part of this proposal, there is a suggestion that we use this equipment to generate income by carrying out works in other areas. In principle, this is a good idea, but until we have all of our roads fully repaired and in good order, I would ask that we put all of our efforts into that before we start offering to repair the roads in other areas. And finally, I would like to lend my support to the amendment set out by Councillor Christie. In particular, I know only too well the importance of increasing the awareness of our young folk on the dangers that they face as new drivers on our increasingly busy roads. We know that the waiting times for theory tests are over 6 months, and it is important that we do what we can to increase their awareness in the interim. So anything that we can do to reduce the fatalities on our roads and keep our youngsters safe can only be a good thing. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Convener. Lochaber residents are joyful at the prospect of a visit from Councillor Ken Gowans. They will bow down before him and thank him in grateful praise for his beneficence. No doubt that is the press release being dreamt up in the press office down below for Ken's visit to the Corn Ferry infrastructure project next Monday. May I suggest to Councillor Gowans that when he makes the bus journey down from Inverness with his £2 capped fare, that is rather pointless in rural areas where we have limited bus services, that he stocks up on every bottle of Gaviscon available in Inverness, because there's an element of a bad case of indigestion for many Lochaber residents within this budget, with the repeat budget savings that we see landed on those businesses and residents that use the Corn Ferry. I so wish, Convener, that when I came back to this council, that I never used those two words, but they are ones that I've used, I think, in almost all but 2 budget meetings at this Highland Council during my term of office. And that's why the Liberal Democrat group are proposing a mitigation as part of their amendment proposals. And the reason being is to actually allow Highland Council to take the time and look at the fare structure on the Corn Ferry in detail. Why are we increasing fares when the service remains so fragile and we are seeing a repeated loss of service having an impact on residents and local businesses? Why are we increasing fares again when you aren't achieving the very budget proposals from previous years? After all, it took this council 6 months to introduce the technology required to take foot passenger fares. And why are we increasing fares when smart ticketing, promised for over a decade now, is still not in place? You've been asked time and time, and the administration before this, to be fair, to actually wait, work with the local communities, and in the words of the leader, to actually engage with them rather than present them with a fait accompli, and take the opportunity to rewrite the whole fare structure on the Corin Ferry rather than piecemeal increases that have an impact on local residents and businesses. But so often the administration's attitude is, if we say that everything is okay, enough people will believe us. We see that with their road repairs figures, and at long last we have the area backlog figures, where we are told that on Skye there is £11.8 million worth of unfunded repairs. In Ross and Cromarty, £7 million of unfunded repairs. Even in Inverness, the backlog is £2.8 million. Yet you would think from the press releases after every area committee that we had solved the problem because none of those figures were mentioned. So let's have some honesty. I'm going to be honest. I recognise that the leader of the council and others are doing everything to squeeze as much money out of the budget to solve our road problems. But we need to be honest that we have a crisis that we can't solve on our own. That crisis has been there for a long time. So it's not just about arguing for extra money and going to the government to seek future investment to help with that backlog of £233 million. I recognise that you're putting an extra £500,000 in the resource budget, but I suspect that will be wiped out before the end of the week with the events of what is happening in the Middle East and the impact on oil prices. So you could go one step further and support the proposals put forward by the Leader of the Opposition, which summed up are a stitch in time saves 9, because you could back use of innovative approaches. We could be saying to the industry that contacts us so frequently, come to the Highlands, test what you are proposing, show us what you can do on the coldest road in the UK. Come and show us what you can do to solve the problem in one of the wettest areas of the country. But instead, you're deciding not to work with us on that. Maybe you'll consider looking at that proposal and working with councillors throughout the year. And in conclusion, Convener, that additional funding would help us go towards fixing the problem the first time round, rather than ignoring it.
Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. Chamber, I think we should all take a moment to reflect that however tricky the budget position may be, either this year or in future years, and the decisions we ever have to make in this chamber are, we should all be extremely grateful that we get to do so in a democratic way, rather than have our homes bombed from above us or persecuted for our religious or non-religious beliefs. And it truly is, looking at the events in the Middle East this week, something that we should all appreciate. The events there are going to have an impact on many of our citizens and an impact on the wider council. And I appreciate that it's very much too early to say what that will be financially, but I think that as part of our medium-term financial planning, that will be something we get to pick up on. Another area we think we should probably focus on, raised by the budget papers today, adult social care is requiring a £5 million transfer, described as a one-off, and I appreciate that there are measures set out in the paper to try and ensure that it is indeed a one-off. However, Councillor Mackenzie has already mentioned the growing number of older adults in our region. The pressures are not going to be a one-off, and I worry that the financial pressures might not be a one-off either. And I would be extremely grateful to the officers in administration if we could get a regular update on whether such transfers may be needed in future future sessions. To get to some of the proposals that have been brought before us in more detail, I truly welcome the increase on council tax on second homes and long-term empties. The events we saw at the back of the chambers today are motivated by the difficulties in getting a proper house for young people in this area. I have moved back to Inverness twice in the last decade, and each time I had to rent a house sight unseen because there was nothing going. It is deeply, deeply funny for the Tory group to be so stereotypical as to stand up and say, won't somebody think of the second homeowners? It is like the Lib Dems asking for a reduction on socks and sandals. It is deeply ignorant of the real issues of the difficulties of getting a suitable property on the Highlands, and I respect that there are councillors here who have second homes, but we really should be not thinking of the second homeowners until everyone on the Highlands has a suitable first home to call their own, or one they can rent affordably. I commend the amendment brought by Councillor Jarvie. NDAS was one of the first topics I ever mentioned in this chamber, and the responses I've had over the years have demonstrated quite how confusing it is. There is almost a morbid humour in how complex and confusing we make a process for those who have attention deficits to seek a diagnosis. If you had to design a process that those with ADHD found difficult to follow, you might create what we currently have. So I welcome that that is going to be reviewed. Coming to the Liberal Democrat budget proposals, I'd like to focus particularly on the Homework Club proposals as part of my role on the Education Committee. We've all heard from people struggling to pay for childcare costs. I'm sure many of you, like me, have heard from teenagers and younger pupils who are struggling to engage with homework and exams because of unsuitable study spaces in their local community or in their home, or for whatever reason, a disrupted home life. For those of you who weren't at Education Committee, I would really commend that you go back and watch the presentations we had from teachers in Wick and on Portree, and I thank Councillor Finlayson for showing us those presentations at committee. It really showed how finding models and ways of working suitable to specific schools in certain areas make a difference for pupils. To me, the proposal set out in our amendment on the homework clubs is a way of trying to do that. It is a way of trying to improve the attainment of life chances of those most vulnerable pupils in our community. If it cannot be supported today, I would appreciate it if it could be reviewed as part of going forward. It is, by my maths, only 0.007% of the council budget. And if my maths is wrong, perhaps a homework club might have helped me get it right. Thank you.
Councillor Barbara Jarvie.
Thank you, Chair. Actually wondering if this is the hustings or if this is a budget with the habitual pops at Councillor Rory Stewart kind of indicates what a credible candidate he actually is. However, I will continue with my comments on the budget and just reminding people that Councillor Stewart also has put forward annual budget proposals before, so strange comments today. The budget, Councillor Stewart's proposal enhances the good Highland Council budget put forward by Councillor Bremner there. I think people have been tried to be really innovative all round this year. It is a struggle. However, an additional £500,000 in pothole funding, I don't think any member of public would object to that, although I do agree with Councillor Rees, we need to look further afield to try and pull in the mechanism of fairer funding for Highland 100%, because we're just slipping behind. You know, the roads are going to look like graveyards. The equity and equality in school meals, free school meals in Councillor Stewart's budgets, just makes it level for everyone and gets that good habit of all kids, including those with ADHD on the spectrum, having a meal during the day, and it's a calming thing, it's a change of flow, and it's just a really good habit to get into and makes it fair for everyone and the parents. The middle situation in the Middle East, well, geez, that fuel's going to be hit. It's very likely fuel's going to be hit. And Councillor Stewart's found £1,386 saving for families across Highland. I think that's quite phenomenal, and a massive, massive amount of work he has put into this. Much credit to him. Truly, he's worked on this for quite a long time, and a lot of credit. I attended the Poverty meeting the other day at the briefing. Yes, we need to take people's bills down. We need to be supportive. And if we can make savings like that, I think we should be passing them on, because the global situation is going to push everyone's bills up. Other savings that have been found is in the fleet vehicles that we see sitting at depots, not moving anywhere. They're depreciating. We've got all these bikes. Can we use them more and encourage that to be used more and be more efficient with the booking of these fleet vehicles? Councillor Jarvie's proposal I find outstanding. The neurodiversity has been at numerous committees. Very, very proud of him. I was actually unaware of this. And that whole model, I wonder if this can also be reflected and considered within the health, social care and well-being, because this is going to affect people going into adulthood if they're diagnosed sooner. And also in the health and social care, the dementia, can something like this be rolled out for people with dementia? I worked a lot with Lord O'Shaughnessy on the dementia pathways, and truly if people get diagnosed and on the right medication sooner, this will multi-million saving on healthcare, on care at home. People are more independent for longer. This is an incredible proposal, Yenda's proposal, and we should see where this model can be rolled out in other ways to make massive savings to the council and our healthcare systems. That this could really radiate well, and I hope it's really tracked well to see how it works. Cannot wait for the feedback of this. It's fantastic. And all credit to Councillor Jarvie's resilience over these years. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Convener. And I would like to echo many of the sentiments made by colleagues. I would like to thank all the work that's been done by this council in the last 2 years of budgeting, because we're working in most challenging of times. I would like to highlight what was said by my colleague Councillor Andrew Jarvie and his work that he's done on the neurodiversity, and his suggestions on here, which I hope are going to be incorporated within this special meeting today, affecting thousands of our children and young people and the adults of tomorrow, the people who will be looking after us into our old age and our dotage. And I think it's so important that we spend the resources and money on it and find the facts and work on that. Thank you to Councillor Gregg for reminding us of the current world events. And yeah, it would be quite tragic to think of regime change. Imagine if the US President forcibly removed the leader and leadership of this council against the will of the people. It like happened in Venezuela. It would be quite tragic, I'm sure. But more seriously, we're being asked to look at the funding in this council and our taxpayers. The Scottish Government funded NHS Highland last year and this year are overrunning by millions, and it's our Highland taxpayers that are having to make up for that shortfall. We're seeing it again this year, £5 million. We all know what that £5 million would look like if it was actually spent on our roads, if it was spent in providing housing, in our housing emergency, the challenges that we're facing there. But yet, each year we're being asked to approve to effectively write a blank cheque for the failures in the management of that organisation or the mismanagement of that organisation and their funds in dealing with adult social care. And I suggest that we have to call upon a summit to deal with it, because it's not good enough that we don't know and that we are left with an effective blank cheque. We hope that 5 million is going to be enough, but we don't know. And we hope that they're not going to come back and ask for a similar amount or more next year. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. We need efficiencies here, and we need efficiencies with every organisation that we work with. Highland Council buses, taking over from where Stagecoach has let down, that's been a great success, and I commend this council on working with that, and that's made a huge difference for people and created a big difference. I'm delighted to see that this council has spent money on building new secondary schools in Tain, in Nairn, and at Charleston Academy, all about to start. So that's very good news. But we need to recognise what it is that we are here to do. We're looking to get the best value for the public pound. We're here to regenerate our town centres and our city centres, and we're here to do everything we can to make life better for our constituents. They're looking for efficiencies, not excuses. And the public tell me that they're scunnered. They're scunnered at having to be asked to pay for poor performance, to be asked to pay for less services. They understand what flat cash is. Flat cash is, if I give you £10 3 years ago, and I give you £10 this year, and I give you £10 next year, you cannot buy as many goods in a shop as you could previously. And we know that with inflation, every time we get handed flat cash by the Scottish Government, it's not enough money to run the services of this vast local authority, which is Europe's largest local authority. The biggest in Britain, the biggest in Europe. And yet we're getting flat cash settlements. It's not good enough. We're not getting the money that we were promised, that after Britain's exit from the European Union, we'll get the money. We all know the signs that we welcome and see. This project was funded by the European Economic Development Fund. We see it on bridges, we see it on harbours, we see it on causeways, we see it on roads, we see it on essential services. And it's not been replaced. And it's not good enough. And it isn't the taxpayers of the Highland that should be paying for that. It should come from central government. So I would like to commend the great work that's been done in the budget, the efficiencies that the Chief Executive and the senior management team have made. I would like to also commend the great work at High Life Highland, the efficiencies, the way that Steve Walsh and his management team there have worked tirelessly to make improvements in cost efficiencies for the benefit of the users and for the benefit of this council. And I want to pay particular praise to the Chief Executive of Eden Court Theatre, to Rebecca Holt, because I asked for, where's the page for the subsidy for Eden Court? How much money are we giving them? And I was delighted when the convener told me they've not asked for the council to give them money, because they're now working more efficiently. They've got their management in place, that they're running the whole thing more efficiently, that they're not coming here to ask us for a handout of money every year. And that's commendable. And we need to be working with every partner agency to see if we can help to find efficiencies for them. How that came about with Eden Court is we gave them, we gave them the income from the car park next door for them to benefit from. So I welcome so many things in this budget, but we need efficiencies, and I welcome them. Thank you.
Councillor Cockhill.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks to the officers for drafting a really well-considered budget subject to the tabled amendments. And thanks to Mr Porter for making the time to walk our group through the papers. And I particularly welcome the recognition of the role of community councils in delivering for their communities and the small uplift in funds to support them. I also commend the amendment tabled by Councillor Andrew Jarvie. This is incredibly transformative, and I hope we can take that through today. I wish to highlight to members that we passed a 7% increase in council tax last year, 2% of which was to be invested in the Highland Investment Plan, and we all patted ourselves in the back for making this decision while limiting the increase in council tax to 5%. A year on, and we see that the whole 7% has been drawn into the general funds that we raised last year, and we're again contemplating a similar council tax rise on the same basis this year. I'm not tabling an amendment this year, but flagging to officers and members that we have the opportunity to consolidate the 2% rise as a standalone permanent feature of the council tax income. We can then choose to add to this percentage annually and may choose to build a pot of investment which we desperately need. While I consider a 7% rise reasonable and necessary this year, I'm very aware that inflation is sitting currently at 3% and wages are unlikely to rise enough to meet this level in the longer term. We will all be aware that the cost of living is the single most important pressure on our electorate. So I do not consider continuing to increase council tax above inflation is fair, affordable or sustainable, unless specifically for investment that enjoys public support. So we must live within our means and that of the public that we seek to serve. I'd like to offer some context to the point on school crossing patrols raised by Councillor Rees. There's been a vacancy for a school crossing patrol in Evington for over 2 years, which has been difficult or impossible up to now to fill. Kilterran Community Council have recently taken on a village officer with ILM acting as employer, and they're willing to use some of his hours to fill this need for the community. The Highland Council are willing to take the person on, but only if that person is an employee of the Highland Council. This would cause a financial hit for the village officer of around £30 a week from having 2 employers for his hours. It seems that Highland Council are unwilling to contract ILM to deliver the school crossing patrol, thus enabling the village officer to have 1 employer for his role. The role is for, I believe, 6.25 hours per week, which on paper looks like an unfilled role, but knowing the context, it could be filled by being a little bit more flexible. Thank you for your time.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you to Brian for the excellent work you've done on the budget. Members, I want to highlight the truly remarkable financial turnaround delivered by the in-house bus team and the growing contribution they now make to the Council's finances and overall budget. Not so long ago, this service was widely regarded as a financial black hole, a significant drain on resources with increasingly expensive private sector contracts and limited flexibility in its service offering. Today, the picture could not be more different. The fleet has grown from 10 to 22 vehicles, delivering school contracts, local public transport and educational outings across the Highlands. In a relatively short time, the team have transformed what was once a liability into a strategic asset, making an increasing contribution to the financial strength and sustainability of the Highland Council. That growth is not accidental. It is the result of excellent management, smart investment, and a willingness to innovate and do things differently. In an excellent budget, with so many positive announcements, increased ward discretionary, increased investment in the comfort scheme, long-term funding for countryside access rangers, and the vital Repair the Highlands Phase 2 funding. Convener, I could go on. Members, the in-house bus service is a real success story, and enormous credit must go to Malcolm, Paul, Ali, and the entire team. However, in the words of the great communicator, you ain't seen nothing yet. And I'm not referencing Councillor Jarvie. No, Councillor Baxter, sorry. As regards Councillor Jarvie's amendment, I found it compelling and very moving. Andrew, well done, and delighted to support.
Councillor Collier. Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Convener. I'm really sorry, I'm having technical issues here. Right, members, bear with me 2 minutes. My system, okay. Setting this year's budget has not been easy. Councils across Scotland are facing significant financial pressures from rising costs, increasing demand for services and limited growth in funding as well. None of us take decisions such as increasing council tax lightly, particularly at a time when many households are already feeling the impact of the cost of living crisis. However, we also have a responsibility to ensure this council remains financially stable and able to continue delivering the essential services our communities rely on. For me, an important aspect of this budget is that it takes a responsible approach to the Council's finances. It balances the budget for the coming years while avoiding reliance on reserves to fund day-to-day spending, which would only create greater financial challenges in the future. It also recognises the significant pressures in areas such as adult social care, where demand continues to increase and where we have a duty to support some of the most vulnerable people in our communities. From the perspective of my ward in Cromarty Firth, council services are not abstract. They are the services that people depend on every day, whether it is maintaining roads, supporting local facilities, or providing care services. Residents expect the council to manage its finances responsibly while continuing to deliver. This is not a perfect budget, none ever are, but it is a responsible and realistic one in the circumstances we face. Our role today is not only to balance the books for this year, but to ensure the council remains financially sustainable for the years ahead. For those reasons, Convener, I will be supporting the budget, and I hope the rest of the members will see the big picture and support the budget today as well. Thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you again to the officers and the administration for bringing this budget together. It's a plan for Highland, and it's a plan for investment in Highland, and it's much to be commended in it, so I'm not going to take anything away from that. It will get us into position to take up the opportunities around the Green Freeport. Preparation for reskilling and uptake of these new skills, we need to get ahead of the game with that, and this budget will help us to do that. The Liberal Democrat amendments seek to enhance this and to look further, a little bit further down the line by starting with the children at the very earliest stage. The Highland Conversation on Education and Lifelong Learning will show us if there are changes that need to be made. We need to remember that the ASN demand has much increased over the years, and perhaps we need to be presenting education in a slightly different way in order to cater for that. We will only know that by investigating and seeing what we're doing and if it can be done in a different way. The Homework Club can be seen as a calm atmosphere to engage in learning for some families, for some pupils who perhaps have a chaotic home life and just can't sit down quietly to do it. This will lead to them perhaps being able to be supported as they continue throughout the school to be able to take up these very jobs that are becoming available. The support and guidance for parents to ensure that they are aware of the development steps that should be achieved at any particular age would also help these children to become mainstream and to be able to take up opportunities perhaps that they would not have thought about before. These steps would lead to more confident young people who are less stressed by new environments as they go through each transition throughout the educational process. These are all moves towards able workforce that we will need as the economy grows, and I ask you to consider the amendments that the Liberal Democrats have put forward as an enhancement to your budget and not something that takes away from it. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you to all the officers for all the work that's been put into delivering this budget. In 3.3 of the report under the heading Risk, it is noted that the scale of the budget gap is significant. However, there is a remarkable amount of work being done to address how we deliver transformation, governance and savings governance and savings delivery. It will require close cost control, financial management and monitoring and tracking of progress. Also, a real focus on value for money must be considered. The information that's been shared regarding local financial returns and the local benchmarking data is very powerful. It does make you think about not only what we're spending, but why we're spending it. I think as a council, we should really drill into this and look at how we can achieve more service delivery with better outcomes for the same spend going forward. I am confident that with this significant cost containment, financial recovery and transformation can be delivered at greater pace. I'd like to note the flexible childcare income uplift. This is the childcare offered by the local authority for wraparound care. Historically, it has always been very much cheaper than the PVI sector, creating what was deemed by many to be an unfair playing field. Even with this uplift, we will be up to £2 per hour per child, cheaper than the average PVI rates across the Highlands. There has been an uplift in the cost of school meals, but the prices were not raised last year, and we now need to offset inflation and the rising cost of ingredients. Officers have been working incredibly hard to identify ways to increase the take-up of school meals, which will help to keep costs down in the longer term. However, it still represents great value for a healthy, tasty, hot meal, and many families and qualifying benefits, of course, still receive free school meals. The levels of sickness absence are always cause for concern, and I'm pleased to see the proposal to invest in attendance support officers to support our managers and teams, ensuring consistent application of our policies. They will support proactive intervention, helping managers to recognise when a team member may be struggling, encouraging supportive conversations and signposting to appropriate ways to help staff stay at work or get back to work. Regular work has been shown to be good for mental health and well-being, giving people routine and purpose. The ASOs will also increase capacity to analyse the data we have in attendance, learning from services which are performing well and targeting support where needed. Flu jabs will be entirely voluntary, but we aim to make them as accessible as possible and will be exploring ways to do that. Again, this represents an investment in our most important asset, our people, to help keep them healthy and happy. Finally, I too would like to thank Councillor Jarvie for bringing forward his proposal to transform the NDAS services. Thank you for the time, the effort and research you have put into working up your proposal. I am, of course, happy to support our budget as tabled, including Councillor Jarvie's amendment.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Convener. I just want to respond perhaps to Councillor Rees's point about the crossing patrollers. First of all, 85% of our primary schools do not have a crossing patroller, so the vast majority will not be impacted by this proposal in the budget. Over half of the budget saving will be made through vacancies that already exist because posts are often too hard to recruit, as we've heard from Councillor Sinclair. Where posts are empty, either due to a vacancy or absence, this presents a potential risk to pupils. The proposition is intended to address this by identifying what measures could be developed so that a patroller no longer requires to be present, thereby mitigating the risks created due to unplanned absences. This is likely to mean that in some areas the provision for crossing patrollers will be removed, but only where it is safe to do so. The intention is to survey these areas to confirm what needs to be in place to ensure safe routes to school for pupils. And surveys will be undertaken by the Council's Safer Routes to School team, and the education budget will provide funding if additional resource is needed for this work. The surveys then will provide an up-to-date position identifying whether permanent road safety provision is needed or viable, and timetable works where this is determined to be appropriate and safe. And surveys will also identify where a school crossing patroller remain the most appropriate measure. And to look at all this, the Council will be consulting with unions in the delivery of the savings measure and how this impacts on the affected staff. So that hopefully addresses Councillor Rees's concerns there. Can I also say that I fully support Councillor Jarvie's amendment and thank him for putting this forward today. It's hugely important, and I know that from personal experience myself, so just a big thank you to Councillor Jarvie for this. Colleagues, this is the best budget I've seen in the life of this council, and I've been here, except for a wee holiday, for 5 years for the life of this council, and I do appreciate the work that has been carried out by officers. And as part of the budget, I welcome the continuing investment in roads in the areas where the need is greatest, and that's welcomed certainly by everybody in my ward, after many, many years of everybody just getting the same amount. So this has been a huge improvement over the last couple of budgets and this one going forward. But also welcome the huge investment in the education estate, including the 2 new primary schools in my ward, which as a local member, I have been campaigning for many, many years. So, and also, of course, the huge investment in other parts of the Highlands. I don't want to be too parochial today. So thank you very much for this budget. Thank you to the officers, and I will fully support the budget this afternoon. Thank you.
Councillor Gillis.
I was going to be sitting very quietly today, but unfortunately I've got distracted by a few of the things people have said. Firstly, thank you so much for the budget, the information, the support from officers to actually understand what is going on. Similar to what Councillor Miller just said, this is the best budget I've ever seen, but I'm only here for a few months. Now, getting your ducks in a row to be able to understand all of this, to get all of this information together, has been really, really interesting. And more importantly, it's understanding what is going on underneath the surface. The awareness of the work, the understanding of the priorities, the investment needed, and the support for staff especially. Now, health, housing, childcare, Gaelic hasn't quite been touched on yet, but one thing I do want to look at is roads. Now, for those of you who are not aware, Rassay has a lovely little road called Callum's Road. And about 40 years ago, there were 8 or 9 members of staff from the Highland Council that worked on it for nearly a year. And that was for 1.75 miles. The whole team on Skye today is under 20 members of staff. Now, the difference in what they are able to do with the funding that they have has been really, really inspiring, especially being so new to the council. To translate those savings, they're bringing more in to council, they're doing more with the budget that they have, the staff are doing so much more, but they cannot do everything at once. And communication with the communities, especially the councils and organisations, has been really interesting to see. There's been a lot of cuts to funding for community organisations, especially to the trusts and things like that out there. So to see the increase in funding that is actually available for the community councils is really, really inspiring. And having had a life of being accused of poor performance, Councillor Jarvie, I also had a really exciting time going through my high school reports and my primary school reports for both my ADHD assessment and my autism assessment, and I cannot tell you how much I welcome the work that you have put in and the amendment that has come through. Yeah, it is an amendment. The support for those of us with a slightly different way of thinking is brilliant. I spent my school years being told to sit quietly when I really couldn't. So being told to get a yoga ball was one of the best things that has ever happened to me, because it turns out it really helps your focus. Now, little things make a huge difference, but had I been diagnosed and confirmed when I was a child, it would have made a massive difference in my life, and I cannot welcome this enough. So, Moran Hang, and I'll be quiet now.
Councillor Baird.
Thank you, Convener, and again thank you to the officers for this budget, which only in a few days I've had quite a bit learning curve. Anyway, it's on the opposition's side that I want to speak to about just now, and 2 points that they have put into their budget, One is the Home School Club. It might be interesting for our friends to learn that we have a new business in Bonabridge, which is going to do that very same thing, that on 2 nights in the week, the kids will be able to come in, they will get meals, they will be able to do all their learning, and there will be retired teachers from the area to help and assist in this. So a very good point here. It's just a pity that we only saw it 2 days ago. The other point to make is in the S6 pupils for driving lessons, that any of the community councils, particularly in my area, are more than willing, if they get an application from these pupils, to award them funds to actually do this. And again, tomorrow we will be having the Southern Community Partnership. It's headed by the police, and I'm sure that there'll be input there to be looking at the safety aspects of youngsters that are taking up, so that they're more aware of what's expected on the roads. So that's just 2 points I wanted to raise. Thank you, Convener.
Mr. Edmondson.
Thank you, Convener. This is overall a good budget. The increase of 7% is higher than I would like, and it is a direct result of the freezing of the council tax for so long. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Although this is a positive budget, we must always be careful not to overstate income and understate expense, a temptation when budgets are tight. I do feel that there's been a bit of this from our budget last year. The current instability in the world order means that there is considerable uncertainty in the outcomes of this budget, and by June there might be a very different budget to look at. The world markets are now falling as fast as the recyclate market, which has been earmarked for a 300k cost to our budget, just illustrating the difficulties of setting a budget in a world dominated by an unpredictable orange man. And whilst on the subject of trash, I am concerned about the proposal to reduce the RCV fleet. Getting shiny new trucks is not always the panacea it's made out to be, and the risks that collections are not made are very real. I welcome many of the proposals and the increase for community council particularly, and they are long overdue. But I note that this has only cost £55,000. I have seen this amount wasted by this council on one single item in my ward by working inefficiently. We really must be making more of an effort to work efficiently as a council, especially in some areas. We need to better recognise the work community councils do. I will be supporting Councillor Andrew Jobby's amendment. And before the leader of the oppositions think this is a resident of Ardross, I'm being a traitor, I am now going to turn into a faithful. I welcome the proposal put forward by Councillor Christie. It turns a good budget into a great budget. The proposals aim to further reinforce communities, help young people, and further improve social cohesion. Investing more money in the roads is clearly something the people of the Highlands want. We have already seen that this administration in the committee meeting did not want to ask for further money. We cannot keep seeing our transport networks slip into further decline. And as others have said, our roads are in terminal decline, and we have to make more of an effort to stop this. Funding theory and safety tests will help all young people developing a life skill, and educating young people about road safety can only have positive outcomes. Without enforcement, there are no regulations and laws. Enforcement issues take up a huge amount of casework. The people want more enforcement. They want to stop litter, fly tipping, to abandon cars, illegal parking, and to planning contraventions. We need to be stronger in enforcing these matters, and Councillor Christie's proposal addressed this. I support the new rates of council tax being proposed for LTEs and second homes, although I note that the 60% of LTEs no longer are in LTEs within 3 years. It is disappointing that there is no data seems about what happens to this property afterwards. The increases to council tax will inevitably be a lot smaller than the VAT relief available after 2 years for empty homes. I'm not convinced, however, that these increases will increase housing availability, and I think we need to gather better data on this. And therefore, the 25% extra increase being proposed to fund Councillor Christie's amendments, as it doesn't seem to change behaviour very much, is an effective way to fund the icing on the cake for this budget. And I urge you to support the proposals by put forward by Councillor Christie. Vote for Councillor Christie's proposals, and we will be ensuring a comfortable return trip for Councillor Gowans to the Corran Ferry.
Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you to the officers who've prepared this budget. This is the first time I've been involved in one, and I find it a fascinating process. I have 3 points I want to make, which I'll do very quickly. In terms of the second homes issue, I find the surcharge on second homes to be totally inflexible, and in cases where it is inflexible, or its lack of flexibility on occasions actually works against the intended purpose of that tax, in the sense that, to give an example, an individual buying a house for renovation who takes too long to renovate it then lands up paying significantly more council tax, which takes money out of his budget for renovating it, and therefore elongates the process. And I don't want to go into more detail, I'm simply making the point that it is rather inflexible. My second point is more a question than a suggestion. I hear regularly the issue of 9,000 waiting list for homes. I don't doubt that this is a serious issue, but I would like clarity on it, because every time I hear it quoted, it's 9,000 people. Does that actually equate to 3,000 homes, or is that 9,000 applications for 9,000 homes? And my third point, very briefly, is I don't wish to actually repeat what everybody else has said, but Councillor Jarvie's motion does have massive impacts of potential cost saving in terms of looked after children, offending behaviour and employability, all of which would have an impact on cost savings on these very budgets. Thank you, Chair.
I'm just trying to get that answer for you.
Thank you.
After lunch. Get the answer after lunch.
Get the answer after lunch.
Get the answer after lunch. Members, we've now reached the end of all members who wish to speak, and I would suggest that we take lunch now and take the summing up by those who have produced amendments immediately after lunch. So could you manage to come back by 1:30? No, okay. And that Malcolm will provide them for you.
Thank you, Convener. And Convener, just before I call the roll, just to add to the transparency statements we heard this morning, I have a transparency statement from Councillor Ross. She's a director of the Seaboard Memorial Hall, which is a participant in the Comfort Scheme. But having applied the test, she's going to stay in the meeting. Thank you. So members, then move on to a roll call this afternoon. So again, starting with those of you in the chamber, could I ask you to confirm your attendance by pressing when you have the option in front of you. Thank you.
Just press the button. Press that.
Yeah. You should press the red one and say you're not here.
Two ladies at the back have got their microphones on.
I have it. You're only worth £10.
So if everybody in the chamber has voted that wanted to vote, I'll close the vote down. Thank you.
My button's only just appeared as you closed it. I pressed green, but it was too late.
Okay. Okay, now if you go around those members. Councillor Oldham, sorry.
I fear I'm in the same situation.
Okay, members, wonder if we'll just do the vote in the chamber again, given the issues that we seem to have experienced, and as a practice for what might be coming forward. So, when you get the option in front of you, could you press the green button to confirm attendance, please?
Yes,
press your button? Yeah.
Okay, members, if everybody in the chambers voted this time, we'll close the vote down. Thank you. And then go around those members on Teams, and can I start with Councillor Cameron, Michael Cameron. Councillor Campbell Sinclair. Councillor Coggill.
Present online, thank you, Stuart.
Councillor Collier.
Present online, Stuart. Thank you.
Councillor Hendry.
Present. Hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Jarvie.
Oh, afternoon, present. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Present.
Councillor Kate McLean.
I'm here, thanks, Stuart.
Councillor Miller.
Present.
Councillor Morrison.
Present, Stuart.
Councillor Niven.
Afternoon, Stuart. I'm here.
Councillor Prosser.
Here.
Councillor Rosie.
Afternoon, Stuart. Thanks, Present.
Thank you, members.
Councillor Gregson, you have the opportunity to sum up.
Well, I can save everyone time. Pending further discussions in appropriate quarters, I'll withdraw that amendment of mine about Upper Bridge Street for today. Thanks, Convener.
Councillor Jarvie.
Thank you, Convener. I've not got much more to say, and I'm looking forward to the report and what our next steps on this are going to be. And there's just one thing I was just reflecting over at lunchtime in terms of, how good are we at detecting this and almost these barriers that are put up at every step to make it harder to even just get a referral. And it's very odd that many people criticise ADHD and autism being viewed as a health issue and being treated within the NHS. But bizarrely, how healthcare works in almost every other area is something that should actually be of assistance. And it doesn't but it's not. So say, for example, if you go to your GP and your GP thinks there is a 5% chance that your symptoms could be cancerous, they will make an urgent referral. That's the bar for making an urgent referral. There's a 5% risk. But then looking at the stats over the last 3 years for neurodiversity assessments within Scotland, 92% of people who've been on the waiting list post-COVID have gotten a diagnosis. And to me, that seems to be almost the wrong way around. It would be no bad thing if someone was referred and it was, you're fine. And the bar has been set far, far too high, and it's filtering out far too many people, a clear majority of people who do meet the diagnostic criteria who are clearly being missed. And also, you're thinking longer term, it's hard to put together a proposal for what next, but from my perspective, from my experience, what we offer in schools in terms of support to children with diagnosis who need that support, we have very few tools in the toolbox. We have PSAs in class, maybe some a reasonable adjustment for exam times, and that's about it. But in terms of the things that I've learned myself just working with different ADHD coaches, etc., over the last couple of years, yeah, it costs a lot, but it's been a game changer. And to me, that sort of training that I've had from those people, the sort of things that should be delivered to teachers and PSAs. So, say for example, I was never diagnosed in school, never had a PSA. If I had been, I almost definitely would have had some kind of support. And when I just reflect on what my school life could have been, I think back to one class I was in where there was a PSA there for someone else, and I consumed all their time because it was like this was the one class I didn't need to bother, I didn't need to plan anything, I didn't need to think. It was just I could put my feet up and relax. And it's this odd paradox for some children that making it easy can actually make things worse. There were things in terms of organisation, understanding, etc., that I fundamentally needed to learn. The way that I learned it was incredibly bruising. I wouldn't wish anyone to go through it. But without it, I would have walked out into the world of work, not able to do simple, basic things. So there is a longer-term thing, and all of the support. And so a lot of the people I found in the last 2 years who've started offering this is like as recent as 2 years old. Like ADHD and autism were not thought of as affecting adults at all until the last 10 years, and we're all now seeing services being run by adults, off their own experience of what they've learned to support themselves. So we are at the very start of something, and I hope that we can make headway into that, because it's not just putting support in, it's making sure it's the right support for people. So with that, I'm more than happy to move the amendment, and I'm led to believe that the administration are accepting the proposal. So I look forward to the report coming to our future meeting.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. Members, we have a choice today, a common sense budget that supports working families, invests in the services people rely on, or higher taxes during a cost of living crisis, because that's what's being proposed by the SNP administration, propped up by Labour and the Greens. Now, our amendment is straightforward, proposing to keep council tax at 3.5%, the lowest sustainable increase possible, with 2% committed for infrastructure through the Highland Investment Plan. But at the same time, we've funded practical improvements that people will notice. Now, Councillor Gowans welcomes the additional 500k into roads, and so do I. But we would double that roads investment to £1 million to kickstart a roads recovery, so I trust he will be supporting our amendment. We'll be introducing free Saturday parking in our town centres, and we'll be introducing fully funded meals for every primary school pupil. And I hope that's a proposal that Richard Gale will be able to support, as this amendment makes school meals truly affordable for working families. I note that Councillor Balance is keen to see the Rangers remain in this year's budget, and I welcome that too. So surely he will support our proposal to double the number of countryside rangers, and like this administration, we are also increasing funding to community councils and local ward budgets. These are the practical proposals that will support business, communities, and if we really want to address poverty and support families, then please vote for this amendment that will leave families across the Highlands up to £1,386 per year better off. Instead of a 7% council tax rise at a time when households are already under real pressure, because politics, members, is about choices, and today the administration is choosing to balance the books on the back of hard-working taxpayers, when we have a balanced budget here at 3.5% increase, which would be the lowest council tax rise in the whole of Scotland. And I'm disappointed that members of the SNP group would see the prospect of a sound proposal with genuine support for our communities as electioneering. However, I've said many times before, what we do in this chamber is all about choices, and it's clear that they would rather invest in bureaucracy than feed children and provide support for our high street and Highland retailers. Now, our amendment is, not reducing planning service money or anything. It's getting rid of non-statutory functions while retaining the core service. It's also worth noting that from the budget paper that's been described as an election leaflet, that 96% of SMEs cite slow planning decisions as a key issue for their business. And some of these functions, I would highlight to members, have delayed a school getting built in my own ward for up to a year and blocked the proposal to turn a derelict home back into use, both proposals from this council. So I would welcome any effort to see Highland building again. And for those who pick up the baton, I say to the members, we've got enough quangos in Scotland, and we're providing an uplift to community councils, so they will be resourced to take on this challenge. But fundamentally, members, what this budget is about living within our means, something that Highland families do every single day. And I believe this council should do the same. Taxpayers work hard for the money, and every pound this council spends is theirs. It's our job to respect that, keep taxes under control, and focus on core statutory services. And that's what this amendment does, and that's exactly what we will continue to fight for in this chamber.
Councillor Christie.
Thank you. Before I speak, perhaps you could clarify something for me. Councillor Jarvie mentioned that he believed the administration had accepted his amendment, and I think you said and pointed over that direction, saying it had been seconded. So just a bit of clarity, because obviously we are fully in favour of Councillor Jarvie's amendment, but just want to know if it's in the substantive motion now.
The administration have accepted Councillor Jarvie's amendment and the funding that was indicated at the same time.
Thank you, and certainly the Liberal Democrat group wants to be associated with the hard work that Andrew's put into researching and bringing this here today. I think it's quite unique that we all are thanking someone for bringing forward a budget proposal in this way. Address my comments initially to the Conservative budget. In all budgets, Councillor Stewart, there's elements that are valid, acceptable, and liked by everyone. The doubling of the rangers, the free school meals. However, within the Conservative budget, the areas that perhaps aren't so palatable to my group are the 2% efficiency, which takes 4.5 million out. As we are a staff-heavy organisation, that is going to be posts that have to come out in order to get that 2% efficiency across the board. And also the removal of the non-statutory services like the historic environment, conservation, the forestry team, the ecology team, the access officers, the flood risk management team, we feel are very necessary, essential and valuable services that we actually need. So for that and for other reasons within the budget, including the taking out of the 500,000 for the Poverty Commission, so they've got no money to actually use for any proposals coming forward, we will not be supporting your amendment. In my speech, I invited Councillors Fraser, Finlayson and Mackenzie to address the proposals in the Lib Dem amendment, and all three of them chose not to do so. I can only assume they can't find any fault in them, in order not to answer them. We had a really interesting debate this morning with budget, with a lot of the comments supporting the budget. We all support the budget. My amendment is only taking one thing out of the budget, and that's the Corran Ferry, which I think people would have expected that. So the rest of what we're proposing is not disagreeing with the administration's budget at all. It's enhancing it. And that's what it was always about. It was about enhancing and making it better. And it's sad to me that there's so many closed minds within the administration that can't look at this. Because I will be shocked if none of the elements that are in the Lib Dem amendment are not, in fact, themes of recommendation from the Poverty Commission when it comes back with its recommendations in June. I would expect they will be. And the fact that you're closing your minds now, and this could have been additional, this would be additional to the 500,000 that's in there for the Poverty Commission. So that would have taken the spend that we could do up to nearly 800,000 on that. Before I forget, I must ask Councillor Gowans if I could have a picture of him driving a bus and have permission to use the quote in our next focus leaflets about it taking time to see significant improvement in the roads in Highland, because people don't want to wait that time anymore. The report itself is quite clear. It says that the majority of people that engaged, the 278, which is not a great engagement exercise, but the 278 that did engage with a full survey, roads was their number one issue. So roads is what it is in Highlands that actually people want to see faster action on. And our amendment does that. It looks at different ways of doing it. Why would you not support looking at innovative ways of doing it? Councillors Ross and Baird were the only two councillors that actually proven that they'd read the Liberal Democrat proposals, the only ones that were to refer to it. Thank you, Michael, for that. The difference, Michael, between the homeschool club that we're proposing is it will be free. I think you actually said to me over lunch the one in your area is paid for. People in Milner Fir, Cool, Merkinch, and other areas, parents can't afford to pay for it. So that's the difference. And the same with the S6 theory test. It just isn't going to happen in some areas. I said, Councillor Ross, you're absolutely right. One of our main items, the Highland Education Conversation, is a brainstorming idea. It's about getting people together. The same way as the Poverty Commission, which you sit on, is a brainstorming idea. The Highland Education Conversation will be a brainstorming idea in order to engage and galvanise and seek parental engagement in how we deliver education at early years, at primary and secondary, and then to engage with UHI, Inverness College, and others, Skills Development College, about how we do better on employability. How we do better on employability for people that might be homeless, people with those addictions, those that are coming out of prison after offending. Because we need to stop people going around the merry-go-round of not having a job. We need to look at innovative ways of trying to get sure that people have jobs in Highland. In the same way that when you go to a supermarket, you'll see the shop there, Timpson's, cutting keys and doing other things. They've got a tremendous reputation for employing ex-offenders into their network to try to rehabilitate them. And there's other organisations we need to learn from. This is an amendment which improves the budget. Nobody said it's a bad budget. Nobody at all has said it's a bad budget. Indeed, people have been quite open and saying, yeah, there's a lot of good things in there. So I'm disappointed that people feel unable to support it at this point. And I'm sure in the future, we'll actually see some of these things coming back through different routes and actually being delivered. I would like to thank people for the time they've taken in the debate today. It's unusual that we have a debate where we're nearly all agreed all the time. And it's a shame on this very small part that we can't actually get total agreement in this chamber today. Thank you.
Councillor Bremner.
Thanks, Convener. Firstly, apologies for the very long speech at the beginning, but there was a lot of good stuff and important stuff, and it's been reflected on by a number of folks in the chamber today, and a lot more than maybe some previous budgets. It takes time to deliver the detail to ensure that the full context is actually delivered, because there are people out there watching. It's not, they don't necessarily read the papers. And thanks for the considered contributions. Just as Councillor Christie was saying there just now, I found that most of the contributions were very considered. A few reflections from myself, Councillor Jarvie. I'm glad that Councillor Fraser accepted your proposal and seconded it, and found it very interesting. Spoke to you at lunchtime about it, and would have listened. I think we would have all have liked to have listened longer, but you were only afforded the 5 minutes, and you seem to be very surprised at everybody giving you such nice comments from across the chamber. Well, take them. I'm supportive of your amendment and would very much like to include it in the administration's budget going forward in the terms offered by Councillor Fraser. Councillor Balance was mentioning about the engagement over the past period of time, and I think that's what's key and important. It takes time to fully develop ideas, and it takes time to ensure that all the impact and the opportunity costs are considered, and also that it fits in with the administration's programme for council going forward. I can't consider the amendments put forward by the Conservatives for many reasons, and some of them have already been mentioned, including what Councillor Christie said as well. I was also very aware of the sneaking in of the 500,000. It wasn't actually referred to in the Conservative document about removing the $500,000 in support of the Poverty and Equality Commission, but it was there on the last line. There's a lot of points in the amendment from the Liberal Democrats that really are worthy of consideration, and that was my consideration before you actually said what you said, Alistair. And it would have been good to have a lot more time to kind of discuss those points and the various aspects. I shared a lot of my considerations about the amendment with my own group. It's a challenge to shape £4 million of investment proposals and their funding when it does have an impact on the administration budget proposals, but not so much in the proposals that were coming in terms of the investment, but particularly actually in respect of the funding. And for me, I really didn't think we were in a position to be able to accept a further 25% increase on council tax in respect of long-term empties, and also long-term empties and second homes over and above that we'd already tabled, because in our discussions with officers and between our own members as well, it was actually, we thought that we really were at the limit of what we could actually take forward there. And that obviously impacts on the ability then to be able to put investments forward on that basis. And also, for similar reasons, in respect of the repurposing of the earmarked reserves for renewable investment, it'd be difficult for me to agree to nearly $1 million, 800,000 of those repurposed reserves to fund the Labour Group's proposals, or fund the Liberal Democrats' proposals. But having read the Labour amendment, even though it's a big ask, I would very much be, I'd be happy to have that chat and to see how we could otherwise scope out the Labour Group's project proposal going forward. But there are two other points that I'd like to address, and I'd like to address them in full, if you can bear with me, Convener. Let's be in no doubt, the state of our roads is because of a lack of investment over many, many, many years. Whilst officers can provide information on the overall investment being there or thereabouts, any consideration along that lines is in the context of a straight answer to a straight question. But it's not with the context. The issue of our roads is deterioration of actual road surfaces. That's what our public think. And regardless of the 3 previous years before the budget of 23-24, in January 2023, the capital investment in roads infrastructure was only 7.2 million base budget. because no sustainable investment plan had been put in place. This administration changed that and increased the commitments to roads capital to currently 21.5 million, and for the next 22 years. That's a sustainable plan. That amount itself will increase annually over the next 22 years, and no other administration built in an annual increase. And that's any administration, no matter the colour of the flag, no matter who made up the administration. No other administration in the future will inherit a £7.2 million base capital budget, and that being the only way to spend on your roads. Previous annual increases were only a periodic review basis. We even know that. The £7.2 million base capital stayed there for long enough with no mechanism to ever increase it. Prior to the figure of 7.2, it was actually only down around about 4 million. That puts it in context. That was for the whole Highlands. Not only have we put a sustained increase in place, this administration split the capital funding so that A, the focus would be on black stuff on the roads, more actual repair of the road surface, and B, we would vary the distribution so that some areas would get more in terms of its demonstrated need. I'm going to mention my own area, where in 2023 we were told that we were only going to have a capital budget of 590,000. Today, the investment in capital in Caithness is 3.3 million. That's a 550% increase. So let's get the context right when we talk about roads. Every area, especially Skye and Rassay and Loch Harbour, have benefited in the same way to varying levels of increase in their capital budgets. The roads redesign process is also in place. I know that the work of Councillor Robertson and officers and the rest of the council can work away at understanding how we can improve the efficiency of our spend on our roads, and we can continue to make that representation at High Rep and COSLA and COHI and directly to government as well. And we have written to government. Back in 2023, you'll recall I had to write to Fiona Hislop in respect of that. And the Corran Ferry, in the state that we are with the Corran Ferry just now, that's because of lack of investment. We have actually, we're delivering £30 million investment in landside infrastructure, nearly £30 million in the new ferry, and I remember all the work that we did to be able to get that ferry and that landside infrastructure, and how we had to work to deliver that. And understanding that, you know, we sometimes have to pay a little more to be able to contribute towards that. So let's get it all in context. But thanks very much for all the contributions that have been made in today's budget, and I commend this budget to the Council, and thanks very much for seconding it, Convener. Cheers.
We'll move to the vote now, please.
So thank you, Convener. So members, maybe just a couple of things to clarify just before we go to vote. So Councillor Stewart, can I just take details of who's seconding your amendment? Councillor Mackenzie, thank you. And also with Councillor Christie, who's seconding your amendment. Councillor Roberts, thanks. And can I just double check, Councillor Christie, that your amendment also incorporates Councillor Jarvie's amendment? Okay, thank you. So members, when we come to the vote, the first vote is going to be between the motion, which is from the council leader, seconded by the convener, and the amendment from Councillor Stewart, which is seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. The leader's motion is in the report, and it also now incorporates the amendment from Councillor Jarvie. The amendment from Councillor Stewart is also in the chat. So when we come to the vote, for those of members that are in the chamber, if you wish to vote for the motion from the council leader, it will be the green button. If you wish to vote for the amendment from Councillor Stewart, it will be the red button. And if you wish to abstain, it will be the white button. And we'll start the voting in the chamber shortly. Thank you. So if everybody in the chamber has voted, we'll close the vote down. Thank you. And then I'll go around those members on Teams. If you tell me you wish to vote for the motion from the Council Leader, the amendment from Councillor Stewart, or to abstain. And I'll start with Councillor Michael Cameron.
Hi. Sorry, I didn't quite get the what is the vote? Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Cameron. So the vote, your choice is to vote for the motion from the Council Leader, the amendment from Councillor Stewart, or to abstain.
I think I will vote for the motion from the Council Leader. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell-Sinclair. Councillor Coggle.
Abstain, please.
Councillor Collier.
Motion, please.
Councillor Hendry.
Motion, please.
Councillor Mrs Jarvie.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Mackay.
Motion.
Councillor Kate McLean.
Motion, please.
Councillor Miller.
Absolutely the motion.
Councillor Morrison.
A motion, please, Stuart.
Councillor Niven.
Motion, please, Stuart.
Councillor Prosser.
Motion, please.
Councillor Rosie.
Motion, please.
Thank you, members. Convener, there were 54 votes for the motion, there were 3 votes for the amendment, and there were 8 abstentions. So in that vote, the motion was successful. Okay, thank you, members. So, members, in the next vote, we have a motion from the Council Leader, seconded by the Convener, and again, that's to move the recommendations in the report and incorporating the amendment from Councillor Jarvie. We have an amendment from Councillor Christie, seconded by Councillor Robertson, and again, that is available in the chat, and it also incorporates the amendment from Councillor Jarvie. So, for members in the chamber, if you wish to vote for the motion from the Council Leader, press the green button. If you wish to vote for the amendment from Councillor Christie, press the red button. And if you wish to abstain, press the white button. And we'll start the voting in the chamber shortly.
Oh, it's not on yet.
And again, if everybody in the chamber has voted, we'll close the vote down. Thank you, members. Now going around those members on Teams again. If you tell me if you wish to vote for the motion from the Council Leader, the amendment from Councillor Christie, or to abstain. And I'll start with Councillor Cameron.
Motion, please. Thank you.
Councillor Coghill.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Collier.
Motion, please, Stuart. Thank you.
Councillor Hendry.
Motion, please.
Councillor Mrs Jarvie.
Motion, please.
Councillor Mackay.
Motion.
Councillor Kate McLean.
Motion, please.
Councillor Miller.
Motion.
Councillor Morrison.
Motion, please.
Councillor Niven.
Motion, please, Stuart.
Councillor Prosser.
Request the amendment, please.
And Councillor Rosie.
Motion, please.
Thank you, members. Convener, there were 41 votes for the motion, there were 22 votes for the amendment, and there were 2 abstentions, so the motion is carried.
Members, thank you all for today, but I think on behalf of all members, I'd like to thank the Chief Executive and his team who have been involved in the preparation of this budget, not just from the administration's point of view, but also from all members who have been, I suppose, helped without fear or favour. So thank you very much. And please have a safe journey home.